This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakeland.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Curt Covert in the third chair.
Yeah, well, it ain't paranoia if it's true.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming. Come here to the speed of an infected mechanic rushing headlong for the life support bay, brandishing a bloodstained wrench. Today's edition is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon, specifically David Jarrett, Canada Andy, Andrew Delaney, Alindo Castro, and Miko Kirkisunyo. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ, Wild Whistleblower Wakeland, and Chief Instigator, the twisty-turny brain behind Cloak and Dagger Games, the most aptly named man in gaming, Curt Crazy Conspirator Covert.
Hi-ho.
Let's begin. Issue number 1. When designing a game, a good trick to use to engage your players and win their admiration is to come up with witty and clever word associations in connection with your game's rules, themes, or mechanisms. As just one noted example, a Cthulhu Mythos game that incorporates the concept of sanity for the players and uses little glass balls as a key component could, for instance, include the concept of losing your marbles. Question. In what decade was the term marbles officially codified as referring to a person's sanity or intelligence in the textbook American Speech? Russell Crowe Russ.
I'm going to go 1940s.
Kiefer Sutherland Curt.
Year 1.
I don't even... Russell's wrong! Curt is in a different dimension. The 1920s, actually, although the word first came into use in the late 1800s. Issue that makes you both wrong. I just don't know how wrong Curt is. It's like he looped. He went wrong and then looped back and almost is right again. I don't know. Issue number 2. Any game, story, or narrative that occurs in space has the greatest natural danger built right into its DNA. Vacuum. Defined as space void of matter. Although it is very difficult to create pure vacuum, even space contains some stray hydrogen atoms. Any appreciable vacuum can be dangerous to a living organism, looming as an ever-present threat over anyone foolish enough to venture into the great vast emptiness. Question. Thanks to a battery of tests on animal and human subjects, scientists know the general tolerances of the human body for vacuum. How long can a person experience the vacuum of space unprotected and still be expected to make a full recovery? Roger Bacon Russ.
58 seconds.
Rene Descartes Curt.
2 minutes.
Wow, you guys kind of split the difference, which makes you both legitimately mathematically wrong. 90 seconds. On the other hand, plants are good for a good 30 minutes. So, Russ, you're probably going to be okay.
Aw.
Issue number 3. No matter where on the globe you're traveling to, there will always be some amount of downtime, whether you're talking about endless rolling hours of car travel, watching countless miles of corn slide past your window, or an interminable layover in some greasy, scary airport half between nowhere and somewhere. There will be times you feel the keen need for distraction. Question. There are as many opinions as there are people in the world, so I'm going to go easy on both of you, and I'm only going to ask for one of the top 5 best-selling travel games according to Amazon. Rest area roundup, Russ.
Flux.
Kiss the curb, Curt.
Mastermind.
Wrong! You guys are thinking completely the wrong kind of games. Yellow Mountain Import Travel Chess. Never Have I Ever. Take and Play Anywhere Hangman. Drunk, Stoned, or Stupid. And, of course, the number 1 game, Let's Go Fishing. Issue number 4. Although a staple in a lot of science fiction and horror narratives, the concept of some form of infection causing drastic personality changes goes far beyond these fantastical stories. The idea that who and what we are can be so fundamentally affected by a tiny parasite or virus is terrifying when you think about it. And although there is no infection that can cause you to turn immediately on all you know and love, yet, the concept is downright unnerving. Question. Name either of the 2 diseases caused by the spirochete bacterium that research suggests can drastically alter a person's personality, including the development of dementia, depression, and suicidal tendencies. Kathleen Byron Russ.
Zombie psychosis.
Kakahira Curt.
Overshatting.
Well, that would be Lyme disease, or, of course, Russ, you're more familiar with this one, syphilis. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 generation is brought to you by
battle foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
Hello.
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 Hey, and welcome to episode 189.
Oh, jeez.
I know, of the D6 generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Curt Covert.
Hey, Kurt, welcome back to the third
That would be
chair.
Curt Covert from Smirk and Dagger Games.
Yes,
Yes,
Smirk.
indeed.
Smirk and Dagger.
Not to be confused with Cloak and Dagger Games.
Well, thank you, Kurt, for
That
returning.
Geekman McNerdigan's a moron.
Yeah, sometimes we all make mistakes. And Kurt,
Well, he misread.
He
It
was
written
wrong.
correctly. I wrote it right, but anyway, he was wrong. That's good, Russ.
Yeah,
See,
you
I'm
know.
missing every easy shot tonight.
you are.
Let's just move on.
Kurt, thank you for coming back on the show. We've missed you. It's been far too long, my
It's
friend.
been far too long.
It has been. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, we'd love to have you back on. And we can't wait to catch up with Kurt and all the covert activities going on over there at Smirk and Dagger. See what I did there?
Yeah, that's true. Although he doesn't want them to be covert. That's not really
No.
what you want out of a.
No.
Well,
Kind
sneaky.
of like
Yeah, I guess they're up
You want
front.
to be out there.
Right. So anyway, we'll talk more with Kurt about that, what he's been doing, what's been going on at Smirk and Dagger. But then also, we're going to do a review of the traitor mechanic game Dark Moon, which definitely has plenty of backstabbing in it, which we thought would be right up Kurt's alley. So
Dark Moon.
indeed. So we'll talk more about that. Nice
that's
effect.
scary.
Boy, it really feels like I'm on a moon somewhere where it's dark.
All right.
But up first,
Hello. Is anybody else there?
no.
You're all infected.
Kurt, do you remember we met up with Kurt here, Craig, not too long ago at Dunkin' Donuts, and Kurt,
I do remember that. It seemed implausible, and yet there he was.
Kurt, do you remember what we discussed in Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah, it was travel games. What makes a great one? What are some great examples? It was interesting.
Yeah, we did talk
Really,
about all
if you're
those things.
going anywhere and you're going to have some downtime, listen to that Lost Chapter, and it gives all kinds of ideas for games you can take almost anywhere.
Like a travel game, it is succinct and highly portable.
Excellent.
So, Craig, I learn, I get larger SAT words the more sick I get, Craig. It's the cold meds.
It's amazing. I think you also get better at segues the worse I get.
So
It's like the segue ability of the show is a zero-sum game.
it is a zero-sum game. So, Craig, if someone would like to listen to our chatter about things at Dunkin' Donuts, how would they go about doing that?
Well, the best way really is to become a patron. Go to patreon.com and go and look for the D6 Generation, or you can go there through our website, the d6generation.com, and you can listen to our video if you want. And the main point is basically what you're going to do is you're kicking a buck or two into the tip jar every time we put up a 4-hour episode. And it helps to put the show together. It helps to support the show. It helps to keep the show going. It helps to keep the wives off our backs. You know, all that sort of
all
thing.
that stuff, right?
And convince the wives that there's a reason
Right.
For our existence. And yeah, and if for $2 or more, you get unlocked different things. For $2 or more an episode, you get access to all of the lost chapters. So you support the show. You're part of the show. You get more of the show.
Right. And Mo
It's
Betta
the
is
gift to yourself that keeps on giving.
That's
It is.
exactly
It's
right,
just
Kurt.
like
Very
that.
good.
Yeah.
It's
You
like the
can use
Candy
that.
of the Month Club, except instead it's the 2 30 to 45-minute extra episodes a month club.
It's like the Topic of the Month Club. That would have been a great name for it. Actually,
Topic
now
of the
that I
Month.
think of that.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you to all of our patrons. And Craig, what is it time now for?
I always forget. Achievements in gaming. Oh, it's so loud in here in this space station. Wow.
Wow. Well, achievements are brought to us, of course, by all of our fine friends over at Patreon, who, as Craig mentioned earlier, help keep the lights on and keep the stuff going. So, Kurt, guests first. What have you been playing lately?
Oh man. So let's see. Just last night I was playing Sura, and I was having fun with that.
That is a fun game.
Yep. Last week I was over at the game store playing Red 7, Welcome to the Dungeon. Played a little Red Dragon Inn, which was always fun.
Yeah. How do you like Red Dragon Inn?
Well, you know, I'm good friends with the Slugfest folks, and we kind of grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved Red Dragon Inn, and they've added so much to it over the years that it's always fresh and interesting. So
Great.
yeah.
Very nice.
And then, not too long ago was Tabletop Day, of course.
Yes, exactly.
So I was at two different events. One was an indie game festival, really, in New Haven, and so there I was playing a whole bunch of stuff from relatively new publishers, and I played one that was kind of cool. It was called Clairvoyance, which is psychic battles, also furniture.
Also furniture.
Yeah.
So do you chuck furniture at each other mentally?
That's exactly what you do. Yeah,
That seems like a win. Do you have little pieces of furniture that you flick? Is like a dexterity game? Do you have to flick furniture?
No, it's a card game, but yeah, it's pretty quick. It's 15, 20 minutes of mentally throwing furniture and deflecting it and that kind of thing.
Because I think if I had a set of dollhouse furniture, I wouldn't mind flicking at Craig. I think that'd be a very exciting game.
That would be fun.
I'd deal with it.
Yeah. And of course, then I was also trotting out. Later in the day, I went to local game store and we were demoing all of our games, including the two new ones, which you're going to be hearing about a little bit later on.
Yeah,
which Dead Last and J'accuse. Both of which are on tap for launch this year.
Yeah, and how did the demos go? Were they well received?
Oh my God, both of them do extremely well. Dead Last, every time I pull it out, I've got people clamoring to buy the actual demo copy from me.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not printed yet. I'm still waiting for it to come in. So,
well, I'm not an expert, Curt, but I think that means you got a good design there.
This is what I'm hoping. I tell you what.
Well, that's great. We'll talk more about those games in detail a little bit later. But yeah, very cool. Anything else there on the board game front or card games?
Let's see. Well, King of Tokyo also hit the table just recently. That's kind of a go-to when I've got just people over and just looking for a little something quick to get into. And I have to always, Star Realms I have to put on the list just because that's one of my digital go-tos.
Yeah.
So I am pretty much playing that every lunch hour just, with a sandwich. So
there you go. Cool. So, Craig, what have you been playing?
Well, let's see. I've been away for a little bit, but I played Guild Ball. Finally played Guild Ball with the timer. And that was an interesting change.
As intended. So what did you think?
Yeah. So Dave and I played it. So he was playing his brewers against my morticians. And it was interesting. It's not like if you run out of time, you lose. It's actually if you run out of time, then you start getting 1 minute activations and all you have is a minute. And at the end of every activation, you lose a point.
Oh, ouch.
So the whole game starts to really speed up. And he ran out of time soon after. I think I was a little bit in the lead, and then I ran out of time, and I just started losing those points. And I thought I think this might be the third game where I thought I had everything lined up to score, and it didn't work out. So the game eventually ended 11-12.
Oh, that's nice.
Because he ran out of time, and then he started getting those hits also. But yeah, it was fun and fast and furious for sure.
Nice.
So I enjoyed that.
Now, do you prefer it with a timer now? Are you a timer convert?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't play without a timer. Even with a timer, it's 45 minutes aside. I feel like that's an hour and a half. I don't feel like Guild Ball should be an hour and a half long game.
Right.
Or longer than that. I feel like it should be right about an hour. So I don't know how that would make it a really fast and furious game, I think, which I would be all for because I enjoy it a lot. It just feels like it's it's like an hour and a half was a little especially I was getting pummeled through most of it. So there's that.
Yeah.
Speaking of fast games where you get pummeled, Arena Rex, I finally got a chance to play that. I played that 3 different times.
Mm-hmm.
And that is fun and fast and furious and low model count. So you're generally looking at playing around 3 models. Mm-hmm. 3 to 5 maybe if you're playing a really big game, and it's brutal where in one move you can kill somebody's guy if you get a little lucky.
Wow.
And so it's really, really brutal. It's not something that you're going to be a lot of strategic thinking and pouring over the board. I mean, you can play that way, and I don't think it would be any fun.
Now, you just started 2 new miniature skirmish games, this one and the new Marvel one. Which one's tickling your fancy more?
Well, Arena Rex is Romans, first of all, and so it's got that on it. But then again, Civil War just came out, so I have all of those Marvel ones. I think Arena Rex is a clearer rule set by far.
All right.
However, it is a lot more limited because you are basically playing some gladiators in an arena fighting each other. So there's not a lot of, I mean, they've got some cool scenarios. They've got scenarios where you can chain two guys together. There's like, you get a guy that's really not going to be much of an asset and he's chained to one of your good guys, and you have to keep him alive and things like that. But for the most part, you're in there and you're fighting in this arena, and that's what it is. And it's fun and it's fast and it's furious, like I said. Super easy to set up, super easy to play, very easy to grasp the rules. Lots of cool, fun little things, but they're all on everybody's card, and each character only has one or two of those, probably.
Right.
Whereas Marvel is, I think, a lot broader in scope, thus a lot messier in rules. There's a lot of balance issues because currently there's only 15 models out for the whole game, and they're all good guys. So there's like, oh wow, you took 3 flyers and a good shooters, and I don't have any flyers, and I think there's some balance issues right now where you don't have access to all the tools you need to face everybody in any given situation. But I enjoyed it. It was neat because it's Marvel, so it has Marvel going for it. If it was not Marvel, I don't think I would enjoy it. I don't think I would have spent the money that I've spent, and I'll talk more about that when we talk about modeling. And then I played Dark Moon, of course.
Yes,
and we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, we will. So real quick, I also played Dark Moon. We had a big 7-player game. This is probably my
big old game.
Third play of Dark Moon, and more about that later, as Craig mentioned. Also got in 2 more games of Level 7 Omega Protocol. So had a big Overlord victory. Our Overseer victory here. So we are on Mission 4, and in Mission 4, there is a little dude with a clipboard that the disco team, the commandos that are going in to do their mission. This mission is to rescue the guy with the clipboard. They almost got him to the exit, but unfortunately did not guard him well. And one of my fear hunters was able to knock away the guarding commando, and then one of his little minions ran in there and killed him for a victory. Now, in this game, if the Overlord wins a scenario, the campaign is over and the team loses.
That's harsh.
Yeah, well, the story really is here that you're going down multiple levels in a facility, so it's not like Descent where you're going back to town and re-equipping.
Yeah.
It's like literally you're on a level, and between levels, you did the next level. So what the Overlord's trying to do is, A, win, but barring that, wounds carry over from game to game, and the time it takes you to solve each mission matters, because as you take longer between each mission, you have less time to solve the next mission before bad things start happening. So it's the Overlord's trying to beat you in a time. Most of the early missions are generally in the player's favor, with the Overlord trying to really make it painful. But if they make a silly mistake, Overlord victory. So we agreed to try it again, just roll back the clock to the start of that mission with all the same states and try again. So, but they did definitely say that's one win for the Overseer. Tried it again this week, and they did manage to get out a little more cleanly, although they spent quite a bit of time there. So that's good for me, I think. So we'll see what happens next week in a brand new level of level 7.
That's kind of cool. That's almost like, doing a little bit of a legacy game, so that you don't have to mark up your components. But I think it's kind of cool that it's got that.
It is. It has that storytelling feel. It has that dungeon crawl feel. It's all sci-fi, military. It's pretty cool. So that's regular gaming there and achievements. But what about modeling, Curt? Have you been building anything, painting anything lately?
So I am not a modeler, guys.
That's fine.
Yeah, but
what about lingerie, Curt? Have you done any modeling of lingerie?
Well, I do have the blue steel look. So
nice.
I've got my modeling, I guess, is prototyping games. But thus far, I've not really been doing a lot of late. So I will take a pass on this one.
Fair. Craig, what about you,
Russ? I'll beat you to it.
Nice. Not a lot. I did paint up since we're playing the original Level 7 campaign, but I have the new Level 7 expansion, and so I painted up in the campaign. You can intermix different parts of the expansion. So we have the new heroes, which is a guy in a giant mech suit and a alien who has gone to the good guy's side. And so I painted both of them up for the heroes to play. I've already painted up most of the other set, so I had that. And I also painted up some more of the blasters, which are some of the aliens that are just coming into these latest encounters. So I've been kind of, as we get a next, every time a new mission comes up, a couple new aliens are added, I try to paint them up, so I'm always playing painted, and it's been having a lot of fun. And the game paints up easy. Cool. Just doing tabletop quality, but it looks great and adds a little bit of more fun to the game. So what about you, Craig? You've been painting a lot, I think.
I haven't been painting a lot, but I've been prepping a lot.
Okay, that's fair.
I have modeled, built, based, primed, and dry brushed with some base coating the entire Arena Rex 13th Legion team, which is 6 models. So they're cool. Each one is a character. They're resin. They're ridiculously fragile. They're probably the most fragile models, at least 30 millimeter, roundabout their infantry models I've ever put together. In fact, I only now realize there was a character at the demo at Adepticon that they kept calling the guy with the broken sword, and he's this old guy in a very bowed and sort of dignified pose, and I thought, oh, that must be like a cool piece of war gear he has. No, it's the fact that the sword is so flimsy, they broke their own demo sword model before the demos even started. And I have the 13th Legion has 2 girls with spears that are really cool and dynamic looking, but the spears are ridiculously thin, and it's a challenge to transport them. So and painting them is kind of like nerve wracking because you don't want to break anything. But the models are gorgeous otherwise. Relatively easy to get the cool effect that they have. If you look at all of their official studio models, the bases they come with are kind of like Wild West Exodus bases, and they're sort of like a plinth, and sort of a shaped plinth rather than just a regular base, and they're flat topped. They just have flat plastic tops. But if you look at all their studio models, it looks like they're on the sands of the arena with footsteps all around them. And I kind of figured out how to do that on my own little version of that with just put a level of green stuff over the entire top of the base and then press in with a sculpting tool to make it look like the footsteps all around, and then just glue fine white sand over the whole thing. I don't know. I think it's going to look good. I haven't painted it yet, but it's primed. It looks decent. So the other than the fact that they're ridiculously fragile and not very easy to put together in some instances, they're beautiful models. Sadly, on the other end of the spectrum, I am also working on all 15 of the Marvel minis from Night models. And those, I was very excited when I started to put those together just because they were Marvel, I think. And you know how sometimes, Russ, you're putting together a model and you're kind of half-hearted, but then as you paint it, it sort of comes alive and you really kind of dig it.
Yeah.
These are having the opposite effect to them.
Oh, dear.
Which is ironic.
So as you add paint to them, they get less exciting?
Yeah, well, they remind me a little bit of the Drop Zone Commander models in that they're clean and they're technically nice, but there's a lot of just smooth lack of detail that you have to deal with on your own. So they don't like dry brush up really nicely, some of them. And there's a lot of variety. Some of them are really cool, and then some of them are sort of plain looking. Their body proportions are very thin and fragile. I've already had one broken ankle on a model that's ironically enough flying forward on one ankle. So I had to fix that with a bunch of green stuff that's all gooped out there now because there wasn't even enough room to pin it. Right. So, I mean, they're identifiably Marvel models, which is cool. Some of the poses are really cool. I just wish there was a lot more detail. And the interesting thing is, because both of these are skirmish games with a relatively low model count, the price per model is relatively high. You're paying about between $15 and $20 per model for Arena Rex, and you're paying, other than the starter boxes, roughly around $20 per model for Night Models Marvel Universe miniatures game. And I gotta say, although the Arena Rex models are very fragile, they look like they're beautiful centerpiece models. Right. And the Night models, not so much.
Well, that's a shame. That's a shame. I feel like that's what they got going for them, is those character models.
Yeah, I mean, I've never looked closely at the Batman models, but they look cool. Yeah. But then again, most of the Marvel models look cool for their studio models also. So they've obviously got great painters. Right. They're doing a lot of excellent work with those smooth surfaces. Right. So that's. I mean, it's still neat and it's still Marvel, and there's Iron Man and there's Thor, and some of them, like Thor, is pretty darn cool and he's right out there, and Colossus is pretty damn cool and he looks like he stepped right out of the movie. Deadpool is really awesome, and then you have at the other end of the spectrum, you've got Black Widow, who kind of looks like a mannequin, and some others that aren't as cool looking. So it's a little more. Every model in Arena Rex looks amazing.
Right.
The night models, there's a lot of variety in the lot of range in good or bad, I guess. So I mean, I'm still liking them. I'm still going to finish it. I hope to get some games in. I mean, I painted them up so we could all play when we get together on a Sunday or whatever. But we'll have to see.
Yeah.
So that's where I am with those.
All right, cool. Well, good.
Yeah,
what about other gaming stuff? So let's see here, Curt. What about books, TV you're doing, or anything other creative with Smirk and Dagger going on there?
Let's see. Well, I mean, I guess this is Geek Fair. I just went to go see Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. Thought that was coming out in 2018.
Captain Marvel. What the hell am I talking about? Captain America: Civil War.
Oh,
America!
Civil War.
Yeah. What'd you think, Curt? What'd you think?
I thought it was really, really fun. I enjoyed it, and and I'm going back and I'm rereading Civil War, the book,
right?
And there's some interesting differences, but I have to say, as I'm rereading it, I think they did in some cases almost a better job of certainly if you look at the dialogue throughout the film,
right,
and you kind of compare it back, some they pulled right from the book, but some I think they really improved, and I thought they did a great job of it.
I did too. I think I really enjoyed it. Craig, did you also enjoy it?
I would agree. I would say it's another one of those Marvel comic movies that is transcending the comic movie genre.
Yeah.
I think it really does an amazing job of dealing with a complex plot with two opposed but both plausible sides, so you can see the arguments on both sides, and you might identify better with one or the other, Captain America, but you've got to, at the same time, you can see where Tony Stark is coming from. They've done a really good job of building up what many people might see as a strange position for him to be in, given all these movies that this is building on, but they've done a great job of laying the foundation of why he would feel the way he feels in the movie. I thought, I mean, you can't see it if you've seen Batman versus Superman and in your head not do a comparison. And I think Batman versus Superman is embarrassing next to this movie. I think it was a bad movie to start with, but when you put it like two movies that set out to roughly do the same task, I think Batman versus Superman is embarrassing next to Captain America: Civil War.
I mean, so the whole problem with the DC movies is they don't have any faith in their characters, other than Batman,
right.
And by that I mean they're trying to make them Marvel heroes. You can't make Superman a conflicted Marvel hero. That's not his character,
right?
And when you make Ma and Pa Kent, hey, look out for yourself and that kind of thing. You destroy what makes the character who he is.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So to me, they've just kind of lost their own vision trying to be someone else, and all the movies are suffering as a result.
I agree, Curt. I think that's the magic of the Marvel movies is they do such a good job of capturing the essence of those heroes. I mean, every single one of them. And that was what was really pretty magical here, too, is all these other cameos that were in this film, or there were so many heroes both returning and introduced, and yet you didn't feel overwhelmed. They leveraged the fact that you knew of them all, so they didn't have to give you the origin.
None of them
story
felt like they'd been wedged in.
Right. They were not wedged in. They felt really well developed. They really nailed them. I loved Black Panther. I love Spider-Man and Black Panther.
They were both great.
Fantastic. So yeah, I really enjoyed it too. I'm trying to think of another movie scheduled for this summer that could possibly be in the same league, and I can't really think of one actually at the moment in terms of just raw fun movie.
Yeah. But to be fair, I know why DC is trying to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, because the DC heroes live in a very black and white universe. You're either evil or you're good. It's hard to make that more relatable on screen as looking at them as real people in the real world.
Right.
But knowing that, you have to kind of embrace it. So, way back when they did the Christopher Reeve Superman, yeah, it felt like a comic book movie because that's exactly what it had to be.
Right.
And when you try to turn it into, again, the Marvel universe, it just all falls apart.
Yep.
Right.
I agree.
And I think, they're also victims of the fact that they can't keep actors in the same roles like Marvel has been able to do because their movies, because as you say, they're falling apart because they're not staying true to their core. Their movies aren't as successful. So you've got like these the A-list actors aren't staying with them as long as they are with the Marvel universe. So you go see Civil War, you're watching a movie that has 12 other movies feeding into it.
Yeah.
So you've got almost a decade of background information to you care, you're invested in these characters, you care about them. Instead, you're watching, if you go see Batman versus Superman, you're watching the 5th or 6th Batman, you're watching the 3rd or 4th Superman,
right?
And then in comes Wonder Woman for 15 minutes, and there's Aquaman, but he's kind of like a shadow in the back. It's like,
right?
It I don't know. It's just very, very unfortunate, I think. But Civil War was awesome.
Yes.
And you can't say enough about Robert Downey Jr. I think were it not for his portrayal of Iron Man, starting from that first film,
yes,
I don't know that Marvel would be in the position that it's in today.
Right.
Agreed.
And yep.
Yeah, he's just the cornerstone of the whole thing.
Yep. I agree 100%. And that foundation and all that, the faith that they've garnered allows them. I don't know who did the fight choreography for Batman versus Superman, but they should be fired.
Right.
And I honestly feel that. If you look at Daredevil on TV, for the love of God,
Yeah.
you've got fight choreography that is stunning. There were fight choreography in Captain America. I was gasping out loud at multiple times throughout the movie, as were all the people around me, just because of the athleticism involved, the coordination, the choreography of the fighting. And then you compare that to Ben Affleck clumping through the fight in what I would consider 75% speed if I was running the fight the fight choreography rehearsal. It doesn't on so many levels it doesn't compare, but just because that's one of my personal loves and something that I pull out of most movies, like that was just, when I say it's embarrassing, that's what I mean, is that fight choreography and that dependence on the digital effects, even in the fights. It's two totally different leagues of, no pun intended, of movies. See what I did there?
Yeah, see what you did there. That was pretty good. So, yes, go see that movie if you haven't already. Beware spoilers. Also, one does not simply walk out of a Marvel film. Make sure you sit at the end of the credits. All the way to the end of the credits.
All the way to the end.
All the way to the end.
The very last credit.
Yep. What else, Kurt? What else you been? Any books? Any other Smirk and Dagger stuff?
Man, I tell you. Well, the only thing is, in Smirk and Dagger land, I've started to. I joined two different organizations that are dedicated to doing demos as a nationwide network, and the first of those is Envoy.
Okay.
So one of the challenges I've had is, I'm still a one-man company, and I just can't be in enough places. I can't be in enough conventions or retailers or anything else. So I've been, struggling to get my name and my games out more consistently. And so Vinny and Avi over at Envoy, had this vision to go full-time and be a service for publishers, large and small, and work with, A-list gamers who just love to go out and show games and new games and everything else. And, so they created a nationwide network, which is terrific. And then I followed that up with Indie Game Alliance as well, who does a similar service. And I think, the way they structure their rewards are a little bit different, but by and large, if you're a fan of games and you like taking games to conventions and to retailers or even just gaming groups, you can earn new games and be given games just by showing them off. So I definitely would contact either one of those organizations if that's kind of up your alley.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. Great. Well, Craig, what about you? What have you been doing lately?
Let's see. I saw this awesome movie I really want to talk to you guys about. Captain America. No, never mind.
Yes.
I already talked about that. I am now. I read Guards while I was in Peru, which is another Terry. One of the first. I think it's 5 or 6. Discworld novels, and one of my favorites because I have to say that the Night's Watch. The Night Watch. I'm getting them all mixed up now. But anyway, those guys, Commander Vimes and all those guys are probably my favorite group of characters, and that's where they all get introduced. So that has a special place in my heart, and I love the story and all those characters, so that's really neat. I reread Turn Right at Machu Picchu while I was in Peru because that was just really neat to have read it and read about all the places, and then when I was at all the places, I wanted to reread it and see it again through that lens. So that was neat. When I came back, I started listening to, or I had just finished all of the Expanse novels, so I was looking for something new, and I noticed that the Reckoners Book 3 was out by Brandon Sanderson, Calamity. So those the superhero stories with the epics and your superhero powers make you a bad person. Russ, were you reading those?
Yes, I was.
Yes. Well, so the third and final book is out.
Ooh, I got to get that.
Yeah, and I'm listening to that, and it's got somewhat what I would consider to be like just dangers of the genre in general. Like if you've got a guy and he's only got one weakness, and we just happen to have that, because it's been set up. But I love it. It's really cool. I can't wait. It's really kind of building to a peak that I'm really excited about. TV, of course, Game of Thrones is now 3 episodes in, and only 2 of them were about Jon Snow. So,
spoilers.
Being dead. So, So I'm enjoying that. It's it's interesting to be like in this unknown territory where you're seeing lots of stuff. I won't talk about any of it, but you're seeing lots of stuff going, is this what he intended? Because there's a lot of development happening all of a sudden. Right. So it's very intriguing. I really want to read the 6th book now just to see like where it's going. And I'm starting to have a more respect for the books again, interestingly enough, where I felt that the TV show was superior to the books. I think that was primarily because the books had laid the groundwork in my head already. And the I was filling in a lot of space in the TV show with stuff I knew was happening in the background. And now when I don't know what's happening in the background, I'm starting to find it slightly less satisfying. So I need that book out, please. George R.R. Martin, if you could get on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on record and say he's not going to finish the series. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think you've said that. I think you're on record already.
I'm confirming my prediction.
And that's a very
I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just saying at this point.
I hope not.
What's his motivation? He's making the monies. Who cares?
That's true.
I don't think he's got
that
motivation.
is true. It's a lot of hard work.
The love of writing.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. And then, as we mentioned in when we're talking about Civil War, Daredevil, I'm only 2 episodes into the new season, and still amazing.
Oh, I love that show.
Nice to see Shane back.
Yeah.
Fans of The Walking Dead will know what that means. But yeah, that's me. What about you, Russ?
Well, real quick, obviously saw Captain America. Now, Curt, you might appreciate these shows. So, are you familiar with a old school, I believe it's 70s, might have been 60s, I think it's 70s, the Thunderbirds?
Of course, sir.
Now, you remember the Thunderbirds, of course. Thunderbirds are go, 5, 4, right? And the Thunderbirds, this was a show that came out in the 70s. I'm pretty sure it was 70s, right, Curt? I mean, judging from the outfits,
Yes.
And the thing about the show that was interesting was it was all marionettes. So there was this brief period in filmmaking
Super Marionation.
Yes, Super Marionation. So they had like really, really cool
1965 and 1966.
Oh, there you go. It was even earlier than that.
Yeah.
So these really cool sets, and all was modeled, and the models of the Thunderbirds are different spaceships or kind of like aircraft, right? And there's these, and they all live in this island, and the spaceships all launch in these fantastical ways, right? So you step next to a picture, and the picture spins around, and the pilot goes through this giant chute, very anime sort of, right? And he goes through this, and then he's in the ship, and the ship launches, and the pool slides away, and the ship shoots out of it, right? And it's international rescue, so they save people. Well, Curt, did you know they've made a new version of it?
I am aware of such things.
So on Amazon Prime, there is a brand new Thunderbirds series just dropped. So if you have Amazon Prime, it's free.
I didn't know it was out yet, though.
Yes, it just dropped this past month, and all 12 episodes, because it's kind of like Netflix, all 12 episodes are there. So if you're already an Amazon Prime member for ordering stuff, you get it for free. It's right there. And what's cool about this, Curt, so it's CGI now, right?
Okay.
But what they did, which I think you're going to love, it's CGI, but they stayed true to the original source material. So what do I mean by that? So there's no longer any marionette strings, and the faces are more expressive because they've got CGI, so they can blink better, and their mouths move fully and everything. But you would swear they scanned the marionettes and made them into CGI.
Okay.
And they did not fix the scale issues. In other words, when the ships launch off the island and the trees bend out of the way and stuff, they look just like little railroad trees covered in lichen, right?
That's great.
And even the water effects. You know how there's that little uncanny valley when you see models of ships in water because the waves are too big for the scale of the ship? Because it's
yeah.
Well, they put that in there intentionally in the CGI because it's CGI. They didn't have to. They put it intentionally so it still has that old Thunderbirds feel.
That's
great. Really, really cool. And all the same characters. It's one generation later. So Dad's missing, presumed dead at this point. I haven't watched the whole series, so I don't know what happened. Okay. But yeah, it's a lot of, it's campy, silly. It's very true to the original series. So if you're a fan of the original Thunderbirds, check it out on Amazon Prime. Thunderbirds are back.
Now, Thunderbird 2 is still in it, right?
Oh, yes. In fact, my daughter was fat-shaming Thunderbird 2, accusing it of being the fat Thunderbird, yes. But yeah, I think it's awesome because it can switch out its cargo mode, and you can have all the different things in there, including Thunderbird 4, of course, the submarine.
That's right.
Everybody knows that. So Thunderbirds. Now, also in the nostalgia realm, do you remember an animated series either of you called Danger Mouse?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
So Danger Mouse is the classic now 1980s British animated series featuring a mouse secret agent and his sidekick Penfold the hamster. Right, and they live their main base inside of a mailbox, a letterbox inside London, and they fly around battling evil Greenback, the Toad. Right, well, Baron Greenback. Well, that too has been remade, and it's on Netflix. The entire series just dropped. It is a little different though, and I'm not sure they've succeeded on this one. So my nervousness is, I think what worked for me about the original Danger Mouse, it had that very English humor, which is sort of that very deadpan, very deliberate, slowly timed sort of comedic timing where Penfold would say something and people would just stare at him, and there'd be this moment where did he just say that? Kind of thing. They've somehow sped it up a little bit and it feels a little more like they've tried to modernize it and make it feel more like a Phineas and Ferb or a fast-paced American comedy. And it doesn't really work with the original source material, I don't think. So I'm feeling a little disjointed. Maybe it's just my nostalgia. So, but anyway, so Danger Mouse, but they're both back. So give them a try. If you already subscribed to Netflix, also free. The entire series is out there. Last but not least, playing a lot of video games with the girls. Battleborn has come out, and both the girls are really enjoying this game. And I'll talk more about that in App of the Ep. So anyway, is that achievements?
That is achievements.
Holy mackerel, that was a lot of them.
Nice.
So here's the final score. Ripley has 147 victory points. Hicks has 132. I have 117. And Hudson has 87. That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over. What the frick are we going to do now? Put the game away.
And now it's time to talk about our friends at BattleFoam.
That's with General Foamy.
It is indeed with General Foamy. Craig, who's the Lewis license bag over there at BattleFoam?
Well, Russ, the Lewis Nisoned bag would be Guild Ball.
Yes, the official...
Somebody's been playing with the Brewers.
Yeah, indeed. The the official, what is it called? The official carrying solution.
The carrying solution for Guild Ball.
Which is awesome because as with all their licensed products, this is what makes Battle Foam so much fun. Not only do you have custom foam shaped perfectly for all the cards and all the equipment you need for Battle Foam, but those cool toppers, those little thin bits of foam you put between your trays.
Guild Ball.
Cool toppers with various logos of your favorite games, licensed official logos, and Guild Ball is no exception. That's right. For all your favorite Guild Ball factions as well
Fishermen, Masons,
exactly.
Morticians, and more.
Exactly. So if you want any licensed products for all your favorite miniature games and you need to transport those well painted, you spend hours and hours painting those models, make sure they get where you're going without any damage at all. And the only way to guarantee that happens, even if you're checking your bag on an aircraft, is, of course, our friends at battlefoam.com.
That's right. We've field tested these bags. We know they work.
We have. And they've got everything from the super hardest made out of this plastic you cannot destroy.
You could drive over it with a truck.
You literally can. No damage done. All the way down to much more affordable solutions, even down to some nice options for cardboard stackers if you want to go ahead and put your trays aside and swap them out with your fancy bag. You can do that as well. So they've got something for every need, every budget.
Seriously, look at this. Flames of War, Infinity, Malifaux, Mantic, Paizo, Privateer Press, Puppeteer Wars, Steamforged Games, Warlord Games, Wild West Exodus. They have it all.
If it's a miniature game, then they've got it over there at battlefoam.com.
Hoo-ah!
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, now I'm relegating to announcing this pap...
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey, and welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around, talking about another AAA title, and that, of course, is Battleborn. Now, I know I mentioned these briefly earlier when they were in beta, and now we've got the full edition of Battleborn. My daughters and I have been playing the heck out of this game. Now, I know right now there's a bit of a religious, sort of religious war, a bit of a debate between which is better, Battleborn or Overwatch. Now, the only thing these games, there's a lot they have in common, really. They're sort of an eclectic grouping of a bunch of these different characters. But in any case, it's not really fair for me to compare them right now because Overwatch is not out yet. We do have a beta, but the beta doesn't include any story, and it's just head-to-head. Although, and of course, we do have the full version of Battleborn. So I'm going to stick with Battleborn and talk about what I like about Battleborn. That said, I have pre-ordered Overwatch also. I'm looking forward to trying that as well. So both games do appeal to me for different reasons. But Battleborn. My daughters and I are really enjoying Battleborn as well as my niece and nephew. We've been playing a lot together, mostly in the co-op mode for story. So one of the things I really like about this, now Battleborn is by the same guys who did Borderlands. And one of the things that's really fun about this game is the great dialogue, the comedy, and sort of that crazy, cartoony style that they had in Borderlands is back in spades in this game. And the one-liners, again, that there's the story, a lot of little attention to detail that really make the game a lot of fun. Even the narration in the co-op missions, when you run the same mission more than once, they've got alternate dialogue that can sometimes come in and make you laugh and smile over again. Even though you've run the same mission for the 6th or 7th time, you might hear some new little witty one-liner, or there's different interactions depending on which characters are running around together, or how you particularly kill a particular bad guy or whatever. It's really a lot of fun, and it keeps you in the game and engaged. Loving the co-op mode. It's kind of like a cross between, it's definitely a first-person shooter style game, but each of the characters are very, very different. So some of the characters are close-up in combat, other characters are longer ranged, and I guess it's got a little bit of that MOBA feel where it's kind of like got a tower defense going on there too. You can build turrets, there's scenes in the co-op where there's a mission where you got to defend something, there's another mission where you got to escort somebody. So a lot of that happening, but it's just a real lot of fun, and that's where I really like it. The multiplayer is not quite as engaging for me. There's where it feels a lot more like a MOBA, and nothing wrong with that. I do like some of those, but this one's not super strong there. Again, some of the lines are pretty funny, especially when certain characters meet up with each other. It's pretty cool. And it is fun, but the real where this shine is in the multiplayer. I mean, is in the co-op missions. And I really hope that they keep coming with more of the story missions. There's 8 of them in the core game. And that's good for some pretty good gameplay, because each of these missions takes about 45 minutes to play. So you're looking, and then most of the missions are going to take you more than one try. So you're probably looking at 10 to 12 hours of gameplay just to get through the main missions. But you're going to want to play it more than once also, because each of the characters are fun to unlock. And as you play more, you unlock more of these cool characters and these crazy characters that are a lot of fun to battle with. So there's a lot there. I think it's worth the price of admission for sure, especially if you have some friends to go in and jump in. And I also like the fact that you can play split screen 2 players and then jump into a multiplayer game with more players. So my daughter and I can be on one Xbox, and then my niece and nephew can be on another, and we can all be playing together via Xbox Live or whatever. So having a blast with that, really enjoying it, and really recommend it very highly for those of you who if you liked Borderlands and so the irreverent humor in Borderlands, you will like Battleborn.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the App, a segment in which,
Hey, less of that. More just getting on with the show.
seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And now it's time for Catching Up with Curt.
Yeah!
Guess who came up with that
That's
title?
a brilliant title. Brilliant.
Alliteration boy came
Brilliant.
up with that title. But it cuts right to the quick, because that is indeed what we are going to do. Of course, you know that our third chair this time around is Curt Covert, old friend of the show, meaning for a long time, not casting any dispersions about age.
No.
No.
As I look over my bifocals at the computer screen.
Right.
But
You know
yeah,
what I'm
so...
shocked about? You know what I'm shocked about, guys?
What?
It's been, believe this or not, 2 years since I've been third chair.
What, has it been that long?
That can't be.
Really?
Really?
I'm glad we're remedying this immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you on twice now.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
catch up.
We'll have to,
Fair
we'll have to,
enough.
we'll have to
We owe
rectify
you.
that.
We
Yeah,
owe
we
you.
do. We do.
We should also mention that our emails got erased somehow for each other. We've been trying to contact each other for about 6 months, but that's still
it blew up.
That's
Yep.
2 years. 2 years is 2 years too long.
Right. So that means, though, Curt, you've been working on a lot of things in 2 years.
It should be a lot of catching up with Curt.
Exactly.
Oh, see how you did that?
That was pretty good. Nice way to bring it
Run
around.
right back around.
I love it. So, Curt, what have I just want to kick things off right now with the perennial favorite from Cutthroat Cavern. I mean, from Smirk and Dagger, which is of course Cutthroat Caverns. I killed the punchline there. But the game that started it all, if you will, Curt. I know it's not quite the game that started it all, but it's the one that got the big break there.
Yes, indeed.
What's been going on with Cutthroat Caverns?
Well, there is actually news on Cutthroat Caverns. We've been working on expansion number 5 for, 2.5 years, I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, we just wanted to get it right. Mm-hmm. It's going to focus on... it's dedicated to the incarnation creatures, which if you know the game, those are kind of like our special creature, the incarnations of, spite and hate and things like that. Right. Well, this is all dedicated to these creatures that in the game are usually the toughest creatures that we have. Mm-hmm. So this is tentatively titled Death Incarnate.
Oh, dear. So
and you will be facing the incarnation of death among all the others. So
is it full of mostly incarnation monsters or
completely
entirely?
Everything?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's there are a whole host of them. There's like 15 new encounters. There are events that are also incarnation based. There are new relics that are incarnation based. So it kind of mirrors some of the powers of the incarnations throughout the years and puts them in your hands. And there's a new adventure book as well.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Those are cool.
So now is this going to be then, since the incarnations have traditionally been some of the hardest monsters you can face, is this entire thing like on super hard mode, or are there kind of like minor incarnations now that are a little easier to give you a break between the big guys?
Well, as you know, I mean, there are now 140 creatures, give or take, with this expansion.
Right.
So they're still intended to be kind of shuffled in with the whole set. If you play nothing but the incarnations that come in this set, yes, it will be a challenging night. But it is survivable because when we've been playtesting it, we've been playtesting it with just these things, and it's going to definitely be a challenge, but it is possible to survive if you work together.
But then you can't at the end. That's my favorite part about Cutthroat Caverns. I love that game.
Yeah.
So good. Now, does it still fit in the giant box, or do you need a new box? Can it get into the big carry-all there?
I'm pretty sure it still fits.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice. Yeah. That big box still doing good service.
I love that thing.
Exactly right. But what's exciting is that you're going to be facing the incarnation of lust. Actually, all the four horsemen are all in the game. So death and pestilence, all that's in there. There's fortune, and that comes with like a separate, almost like tarot-like deck in there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you have the choice. Are you going to draw one of the fortune cards before you attack or not? And depending on whether you play it face up or inverted, it has a different effect.
Right.
And if you say, you know what, I've been hosed too long for by these, I'm not going to do anymore.
Right.
Well, if you don't defeat Fortune by drawing her card out of that deck eventually, then at the end of the game, for every card that's still there, you have to fight Fortune, and it's very tough. Every card that's left powers her up, so it's kind of neat.
That sounds really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
Are there any other new twists and turns beyond the monsters?
Well, like I said, there are going to be these relics that are really extensions of some of the incarnation powers that you can then wield as a player character. And I think the actual adventure book is going to be a lot of fun as well. One where it really is kind of a showdown with Death. And Death, by the way, and should be no surprise, is no joke in the game. It's one of our boss encounters. So it shows up, it goes booga booga, does something terrible to the entire party,
then goes away for more later,
and then it drops to the bottom of the deck to face as the final one.
Yeah.
When Death actually hits you, he removes your hand completely.
Oh wow!
Wow!
And of course, you'll get one more card after his attack.
Right.
Hopefully that's a good one, because if he hits you again and you have no cards, well, at that point you are dead.
You are dead.
It's not damage.
Alrighty then.
Dead.
Death has chosen you. You've been marked.
Yep.
Wow, that sounds particularly nasty.
Yeah, it's a good set. I'm really excited. And one of my dear friends, and he's been kind of our instigator, part of our instigator family for a long time, Jonathan Loveley. It was actually his idea to come up with this set, and he's been the lead designer on it.
Oh, cool!
So he's writing the adventure book, and he's crafted a lot of these encounters, and of course now we're just kicking them around together and perfecting them. So
that's very cool. Now, for folks who haven't tried one of the adventure books yet, how I didn't realize there's an adventure book built into this expansion. That's awesome. How do they work for those who aren't familiar?
So if you remember the Choose Your Own Path adventures, just like you used to read as a kid, and you get to a certain point, you're given a choice. You do this or you do that. And whatever you choose changes the outcome of the story because it sends you along a different path. Well, that same mechanic is an overlay to playing the game. So yes, you'll still face your same 9 encounters, but there is a true narrative, a real story that, depending on what actions you take, you'll encounter different things. You'll have new, kind of like traps and other things you have to navigate that are not part of the actual encounter cards, just more fun stuff to play through. And it really gives more of a dungeon-y feel. So we published now a total of 2 adventure books, which have 2 adventures each in them, so a total of 4. And they're just a kind of a nice add-on. It makes for a great session. It's kind of hard to play it again because some of the secrets, but to really shake things up for a night, it's great.
And it makes the game a little more co-op-y, right?
Well, no, it's still Cutthroat Caverns.
So only one guy makes the decision at the end, or is it kind of because there's multiple sessions of Cutthroat Caverns through the adventure book, right? Or is it one big session? I'm forgetting.
It's kind of one big session, and then you flip it over and you can do it another night.
Got it. Okay.
But and everyone has a chance to be the narrator. The book gets passed around, and everyone is making decisions together as a group. Unless, of course, you're the reader and it's talking specifically to you, and you just get to see something. Well, that's also possible. So
cool, awesome. So it just adds a little more depth to the game, which is great.
Yeah,
very cool, very cool. So Cutthroat Caverns still doing well and still getting awesome expansions. So that's good. What else are you guys working on?
Well, we have been working for the past, maybe a year and a half now on a design that I'm really proud of, but it's been challenging to figure out how I'm going to produce it. So let me kind of describe it.
Okay.
Imagine it is a Cthulhu-based dice game.
Ooh.
And now picture at the center of your table, about 1.5 feet tall, a cardboard 3-dimensional clock tower.
Mm.
And coming out of every side of this clock tower are tentacles.
Ooh.
And the tentacles, forming a network inside the tower, hold a whole bunch of marbles.
Okay.
As a punishment device for if you fail your dice rolls in your investigation. So this is a game about investigating horrific locations without losing your marbles.
So it's kind of like that's awesome.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah,
That was excellent.
it is called the Tower of Madness.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is a hoot to play. It very much borrows from a similar mechanic from a favorite childhood game.
Kerplunk, right?
Exactly,
Kerplunk,
right.
yeah.
So, but that's not the game. That's really just the punishment device. So
Nice.
tension as you start drawing these tentacles out. If you fail your investigation roll, you don't know what's going to drop out of the tower, and anything that drops affects you immediately. So it might start causing you to go insane.
So the different colored marbles, I assume the different colored marbles.
Different colored marbles.
And do they have different effects? So if I get a red and a blue, does that affect me differently than when I got two reds?
It's just the number that you get of each color. So white marbles get you more spell cards, which are either good for you or bad for other people.
Mm-hmm.
It could get you points because you've made additional discoveries.
Mm-hmm.
It could start driving you insane. If you get 4 red marbles, you go insane, and now you join the game trying to bring Cthulhu.
So it's semi-co-op, but then, kind of like Student Bodies, you can go evil.
That's correct.
Very cool. I like that a lot.
And, of course, there are 3 Doom marbles. And if the 3rd Doom marble drops before you finish the encounters, the location stack, then Cthulhu rises and all the sane players lose.
Oh, nice. That sounds really cool, Kurt. I think that's awesome.
I love the marbles.
Sounds really cool. I love the lose your marbles thing. And it sounds like the components are going to be amazing. Now, have you solved the component challenge with this game? It sounds like you have really challenging bits there for this one.
Yeah, well, I didn't want it to come in for $100. So
right.
That said, yeah, I think I've got a solution, and this will likely be our very first Kickstarter that we've ever done.
Oh, that's big news, Kurt. Big news.
Yeah,
that is big news.
So right now, I think we've got like a base version, which would be pretty much all constructed out of cardboard.
Yeah.
And then, assuming it gets as much fervor stirred as I assume it might when you see the way this thing looks, it's got we prototyped 3-dimensional plastic tentacles that would actually come out of here as well.
Oh wow!
It's a sight to see. When people pass by the demo of this, where I brought the prototype out, it just stops everyone in their tracks.
Now, how tall is the tower, Kurt? Is it?
It's like a foot, foot and a half.
I'm just
tall.
holding my hand up here, trying to imagine the size of this tentacle.
Foot and a half is that's a pretty good sized tower.
Tentacle festooned 2 foot tall tower, 1.5 foot tall tower. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And what's fun is it's a solid dice game just at the outset.
Right.
It's a push your luck kind of thing, and so that has its own fun.
Now you doing custom dice with fancy sides and everything?
Of course.
Of course you are, right.
And then when you actually pull the tentacle, I mean, there's the palpable tension of people as they, have to pull that out of there. Like, oh, what's going to drop? It's great. So
awesome. I imagine the marbles are just, sort of shaken up and dumped in randomly, right? So you could get 3 Doom markers like running the first pull.
You could. I've never seen it happen, but you could.
Interesting. That's really cool, Curt. It sounds very unique. I'm trying to, obviously there's kerplunk in there someplace, but I think it's going to look, if you get the components right, I think it could look really amazing. That sounds awesome.
I think when people have played it, another thing they've kind of associated with, what was the someone used a Jenga tower and as a way to show people going insane and losing their grip. I forget now the name of the game, but it has that same kind of a feel. You kind of using something classic to get an emotional reaction in a different game.
Yeah, I like it. I like the losing your marbles line. That's fantastic. I can already see the box art now in my head, Curt. The ads write themselves, Curt.
They do. They do.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. That's great. That's a real. I can't. Now, do you have a date in your head when the Kickstarter is going to start? Or you don't have to give me an exact date, obviously, but like, is it this year? Is it next year? Is it a couple months from now? What are you thinking?
So I'm thinking that it's going to be shortly after Gen Con.
Okay.
So don't hold me to it, but that's my goal. So I'm going to have a prototype of the tower and the tentacles.
That'll make a huge mob. I'll have to come by and check that out. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And of course, I've also been play testing and evaluating a whole bunch of other designs that have been being pitched to Smirk and Dagger as well. Because of late, I've really started to kind of open the doors for designs of new designers. So in fact, this year, two of my new games are from other folks. So.
Nice. So you're kind of expanding it out there, letting other people into the stable. That's great. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. You probably can't give us any hints of some of the games you're trying out.
No, probably not at this point.
All right.
But as I start talking about what we've got this year, well, that's going to naturally fall right into talking about some other folks' games. So
all right, cool. Well, let's get into that then. So. So you have as Craig mentioned at the top of the segment here, we haven't talked to you in a while, and
Curt mentioned that.
Or Curt mentioned it. So I was trying not to. All right, fine. So
I didn't believe him,
So I think the last time we had you on was when you were just starting to talk about Nevermore coming out. Before it was out. So I think I was in 2014. So I think you're right. It has been that long. Wow. I feel very negligent, Curt. I apologize. Yes. So anyway, so Nevermore. How did Nevermore do? I know it's been out. I know I've played it. We have a copy. How did it do for you guys?
So I have to say, Nevermore was almost a surprise hit. I mean, I knew that I had designed a pretty tight game. I was really enjoying it, and it is a casual card drafting game.
Yep.
Kind of a battle between light and shadow magic, where if you do poorly and you lose all your health, rather than being eliminated, you're transformed into a raven. And you can't win as a raven, but you're still playing and you're causing doom to other players as you struggle to regain your humanity and get back in the game so you can win. It's a pretty straightforward game, and it's loosely based on Poe, trying to imagine how Poe's raven came to be. Well, you're going to find out because potentially you might be turned into one. Right. But in any case, I'm not sure what exactly happened. Maybe I did better marketing. Maybe the cover art of this raven really just connected with people. The connection to Edgar Allan Poe, the gameplay itself, but everything kind of came together, and we had a phenomenal year with Nevermore.
Great.
What I'll say is we tripled our launch record from anything I've done previous.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Tripled.
That's fantastic.
In fact, I brought what I thought was going to be way more than I could sell to Gen Con, based on past experience, and we ended up driving out. I had one of my guys drive out to the warehouse and bring more.
Nice.
And we sold close to 500.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Wow,
well, it doesn't surprise me too much because, as you mentioned, the box art's fantastic. The card art is fantastic. It's one of those games you can easily throw in your bag and carry it with you and play. And it's got a fun mechanic. It's got some, as is classic with all your games, that screw your neighbor component where you're really making people very frustrated with you, which is great.
Yep. It's all about hate drafting, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just really awesome. So it's a great little game. I like it a lot too. So I'm glad it's doing well for you guys. Are there any thoughts on an expansion for Nevermore?
Well, that's actually one of the products that we've got coming out for this year. In fact, it's funny. I never imagined that this game would be able to be expanded. For that matter, I built it as very much a standalone one-shot game. Mm-hmm. But when I was at Gen Con, there was another publisher from Italy who approached me and said, we'd love to do this in Italian. And after I talked with him for a while, he said, but for our market, it's the abstract scoring is not perfect for our market. We would love to have characters. And it's like, well, you mean like character art? It's like, well, character art, some abilities, that would really help us sell the game. It's like, I didn't build the game for that.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, but could you? I'll get back to you. So coming home from Gen Con, I started thinking about it and, what we could possibly do with it. And went through a whole bunch of testing, and I don't know, maybe a month and a half later, I had what I thought was a really solid, workable solution. So we have created an expansion called the Spectres of Nevermore.
Ooh.
And that will be out in time for Gen Con.
Nice.
Yep. What is in there are 12 character cards. And 12, this is obviously a drafting game at its core, so you get to draft your character as well.
Oh, nice.
And it delivers a unique power for you as a player, both in your human form, and should you be turned into a raven, you get another one.
Oh, neat.
A separate one.
Do you flip your card over to be raven mode and human mode?
Sort of, yeah. You move a token up and down, so it blocks, either one passage of copy or the other.
I get it. Okay. Yep.
Yes. And of course, it also comes with deluxe tokens. Now, I'm pretty sure you saw our poker chip tokens for this game.
Yes.
That was a premium that we were handing out at Gen Con last year.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those were a huge hit.
Yeah, those were awesome looking. Wow, they were great.
Yeah, so we were actually asked if we could make those more available for those who couldn't come to Gen Con that year. Uh-huh. So that's part of the expansion as well.
Cool. So they're built into Spectre. So you get cool tokens to bring the game out and then new characters with... Now, to the characters, you mentioned they're drafted... And it's called Spectres, so I wonder if that implies can the character you control change, or once you've drafted your character, you're that guy?
You're that guy.
Okay.
The Spectres of Nevermore are all based on other of Poe's works, so characters in all his short stories and poems.
I was going to ask you, did you carry the Edgar Allan Poe theme through them?
Yes, in fact, we made it even more so. So the original game, was kind of a nod to Poe. Mm-hmm. Here, those characters that you're now playing, let's say Usher, Dupin, Lenore, the Telltale Heart, the Imp of the Perverse, all of these characters have really cool thematic abilities. So, for example, Ligeia, her story was all about, she was married to this guy, she died, and she just would not stay dead. She ended up kind of possessing his second wife and, kind of killing her almost.
Right.
And it's just, she just would not stay dead. Well, of course, her ability is very similar. So it makes her really easy to get back into play if she turns into a raven.
Oh, cool.
So she's going to give you a little boost in that direction. Where someone like Dupin, who's, kind of like the first detective, story ever, he helps, get you more cards in your hand and things like that. So
that sounds great. And Craig, it sounds like this could be a good game for whenever an English teacher does a unit on Poe.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
The cool character tie-ins are awesome.
That's great. Very
just
cool.
the kind of cleverness we've come to expect from Smirk and Dagger.
Well, thank you so much.
Indeed. Do the characters increase? Well, the player interaction is pretty much nonstop in Nevermore, but is there a couple of them that really poke at each other characters as well?
So that's really interesting. Anytime you do, character abilities, balance is always really hard.
Right.
And one of the things that I realized as I was creating all these different abilities, there were some that I'd have some players like, oh, this is a horrible ability, and then the next time I played it, it would be like someone's favorite ability. And I was like, well, this is weird. I'm getting like inconsistent feedback all over the map.
Right.
And what I started realizing was that the various character abilities were all built tailored to different play styles that I saw in the game.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a turtle player, you're playing very defensively, one character is going to be like the best thing ever. But if you're a more aggressive player, you're like, I don't want that.
Right.
Right.
And there are some players who like to take more action. So there's some that you can kind of, decide, are you going to enact that ability this turn? Or are you going to defer? Like, for example, one of them allows you to skip your pass 2. So you can just let those cards go by you over to someone else. So you get to keep more of your cards. Mm-hmm. But some people that are like, that's not as important. What they want to like build a little castle and be safe and be able to heal whenever they need to and those kind of things. So it really depends. There are lots of different play styles reflected in the 12 characters, but that's why we had to definitely have drafting, because you have to be able to choose your character. If you just got handed one at random, you might hate him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That could
excellent.
stick an eye in the game enjoyment of the game.
Yeah. Yep.
Stick an eye. Stick something in your eye.
And
I don't know.
And it sounds like you have 12, and I'm trying to remember what the max player count is in Nevermore. Isn't it 5?
It's 6.
6. So you have double the number of players, so you won't get stuck with if your play group particularly thinks one particular person is not the best, you won't be stuck with that guy or gal.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Nice. And the way it works, you're given 2, you choose your favorite, you pass the other one to your left, and you take that one and compare it to the one you saved. So you have a total of 3 that you look at and choose your favorite out of that 3, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds really good. I can't wait to try the expansion. That's excellent. Very cool.
Yeah.
And you said that'll be out before Gen Con, or at Gen Con, you said.
That's going to be at Gen Con, yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Very cool. Awesome. So
busy.
That's a lot, Curt. You doing anything else? That's already quite a lot.
So I got to tell you guys, this is a banner year for Smirk and Dagger. For the past, 13 years, we have done one game a year because that's what my little one-man shop could achieve.
Right.
This year, for the first time, we have 3 titles that are coming out.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So Spectres of Nevermore is one of them, and then we've got 2 more. We got J'Accuse, and we've got a game called Dead Last. Ooh. And J'Accuse is going to also be a Gen Con release, and Dead Last is going to be earlier. That's going to be Origins.
Oh, wow. So you got a bunch of games coming out this summer.
Yeah, it's really exciting. In fact, this is the first time I'm going to be back to Origins in a while as well. So.
Wow, you look at you. You're going everywhere. So
You cannot be stopped.
Well, tell us. So J'Accuse, what's that about?
Well, J'Accuse is a game of murder, accusations, and denials.
In French.
In French. In fact, it takes place in a parlor in France in like the 1920s. And one of the best ways to describe it is it's almost like playing reverse Clue. And what I mean is that it's not about who done it, because you've all done it. You have all killed this old miser, and now it's a matter of making sure that you're not paying the price for it, because only one really has to pay the price. So this is shoving evidence around at other players, trying to get them convicted of murder. So there's one loser and a table full of winners who got away with murder.
Oh, wow. So there's only one loser. That might be the most cutthroat game concept I think I've heard you share.
Yep. And it's what's kind of fun about it is it's got a blind voting procedure. So you're playing suspicion cards down, so it's going to pass suspicion of the various pieces of evidence that are on the table. Things like motive and weapon and opportunity. That there's one of each on the table in front of different players, and we're going to pass implicate to the left. If the most people voted for left, then evidence is going to be moving to the players on the left. Interestingly enough, though, no one knows yet what evidence is going to be affected. That's controlled by the one player who's the inspector for the turn. And he's got investigation cards that show either 1, 2, or 3 pieces of potential evidence. And let's say that inspector happens to have the opportunity right in front of him. Well, is he going to decide to try to pass that away by playing a card that actually shows an opportunity? Or is he afraid that someone's going to try to accuse him of being guilty of that piece of evidence and therefore put an investigation down that doesn't even have it? So no matter what happens, he's not going to get framed for that. In the end, you can pass all this evidence around as much as you want, but if there is no majority vote, or the majority vote is in fact j'accuse, at that point, the evidence that the investigation shows turns from suspected to hard evidence against you.
Oh, wow.
And so you lose if you get 1 of each piece of evidence against you, or 5 of any type, and that's just a preponderance of evidence that just convicts you.
Oh, wow. That sounds pretty cool. Now,
fun.
is it how would you describe the game? Is it light? Is it heavy? Is it sort of in the middle?
This is light. This is something that you can bring anybody into the game.
Great. And is it easy to carry around as one of those nice portable ones, kind of like Nevermore?
You know what? It's even a little bit smaller than Nevermore, and it's got a more attractive price point too. It's only going to be $20.
Oh, nice. And what's the player count? How long does it take to play?
3 to 6 players, about depending on how many players. 30 to 45 minutes.
Oh, so it's nice and quick. That's sounds like a great little game, and it sounds like a very different. Most travel games or good portable games. And I know we talked about this more in the last chapter. Are card based, and they're sort of card games, but this sounds like a very different kind of game for that. Which is cool.
Yeah, and it's very much card based, but you do have a player mat in front of you as well, which gives it a little bit more of a board game feel. But most of the action is card based and passing around of evidence. So
cool. That sounds awesome. That sounds really neat. I love the theme. The theme sounds great.
Yeah,
very cool.
Awesome.
Very cool. All right, and you mentioned Dead Last, which is what's that about?
All right, so Dead Last, I got to say, I'm very excited about Dead Last as well. Oh, but before I go on, I just want to mention, like I said...
Oh, yeah, who's the designer? We forgot to mention who...
That's exactly what I want to get back to, yeah. So both j'accuse and Dead Last are, came in from other designers. J'accuse was designed by, again, Jonathan Lavallee, who is working on Cutthroat Caverns #5. Mm-hmm. He's an indie role play designer, and he's also done some other card games as well. But he ended up showing this game to me last year at Gen Con. We had a big pizza party for my crew, which is like, well, again, you were there. I had a big 20 by 20 end cap, and I had about 16 of my family of instigators help me in the booth. So I had a big pizza party, and he's like, "Hey, after pizza, want to try this game I've been toying with?" Which was kind of a veiled pitch, which everyone really enjoyed. So, and then over the past year, we kind of worked on it together. I added a little bit more a few more game elements to it. So that you really could feel the full effect of shoving stuff on people and trying to frame them up. But yeah, so that's his design, and very excited about that one. Dead Last was brought to me by Matthew Grosso and Andy Patton. Well, actually, I'll say it was brought to me by Matthew's friend, who tracked me down at a convention that Matt Grosso couldn't be at. And it was one of these conventions, kind of like Unpub. It's called Metatopia, which takes place in New Jersey every fall. And it is all dedicated to prototype playtesting.
Right. Cool.
And so when he apparently came up with this idea for the game, he I think almost like instantaneously said, "Oh my God, you know who has to see this?" And he thought of us. So because he couldn't be at Metatopia, he sent his friend up to like corner me and make sure that I played it. Which I actually had really wanted to sit and play it because he was very diligent throughout the con, but I kept on getting distracted, couldn't get there. It was like the last moment of the con. I was just about to leave, and I was with my son, and I was like, "Oh, right, okay." And I asked my son if he wanted to, if he had one more in him. He's like, "Yeah, why not?" So we played it, and I'm so glad I did. Dead Last is it's very much in the social gaming space.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big party game kind of a thing. It seats 6 to 12 players.
Oh wow! So you're getting in werewolf territory, sort of.
That's correct. Yeah. But it's really important to note that this is not a social deduction game.
Okay.
Almost. What? Oh, yeah. Well, so that's the thing. Almost every social game is a social deduction game. It's just it's got a new theme, a new wrinkle.
Right.
But they're all very much similar.
Yeah.
Well, Dead Last, the beauty of it is that there is no hidden traitor. Dead Last is a social collusion game, is what I've called it. And by that, what I mean is you are all sitting around the table and you are conspiring and then voting upon whom to kill each round. And it's all in an effort to be like the last player standing and collect gold at the center of the table. And what's beautiful about this game is that, well, first of all, you have to be in the know all the time. Because if you don't vote with the largest group, you also get eliminated. So, for example, we're all sitting 12 of us around the table. We all have these, target cards in front of us. I'm player red, you're player purple, all these kind of cool pop art, graphic images on them. And
that was interesting.
That was an audio popping.
Oh,
that was my son saying he's coming home.
Oh, there you go. We have a text.
Yes. So anyway, we got all these targeting cards. You got this handful of cards that mirror the targeting art of everyone at the table. So yes, everyone's going to take one of them. We're going to vote at a certain time, and we all reveal them. Whoever gets the most votes, yes, they're dead. They're eliminated from the round. Mm-hmm. And anyone who didn't vote with the largest group is also dead. So very quickly, you go from 12 players to like 5 down to like 3. People die left and right in this game before they eventually come back to life for the next round. And you're only out for like, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. So it's not usually a big deal. And any means of communication is allowed as you are plotting and conspiring. Mm-hmm. So a glance, a nod, pointing a finger, flashing their target card to someone while you're negotiating, behind their back. All of that is completely fair game. You can text someone a target. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
But you just want to make sure you don't tip off the target. Because if the target knows you're coming, they're going to play their own color as their vote, which is an ambush. So they'll end up staying alive if they are, in fact, the target, and then they get to kill one of the people that came after them.
Oh, neat. Oh, cool. So you have to suspect. So you either think you're but you're only the target if it's the largest group voting for you, right? So
that's right. So if
4 people vote for Craig,
you played ambush and you're not the target, guess what? You're also dead.
Oh, wow. Because you got to be in the largest voting block, right? So
that's right.
If 5 people vote for me to be dead and 4 people vote for Craig, everybody who voted for I'm dead, and everybody who voted for Craig is dead.
That's right.
Right. Wow. But now, if Craig voted for me, he's still alive. But if Craig voted for someone else, he's also dead. Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. And then, so how do you score each round? So there's some coins that go in the middle, and so if I am the last person standing, do you get a coin for each like mini round you survive or something? Is that how it works?
There is 4 gold at the center table for the last man standing. Now, the gold is numbered either 3, 4, or 5 points underneath there, and you're going for a score of 24 or 25, depending on how many people you've got.
Right.
Now, if you are the last man standing, you get all 4 of them. Mm-hmm. Pretty big score.
Right.
Sometimes no players will survive because you all end up killing each other, and it stays till next round.
Right.
Or it'll go down very often to 2 players. And if that happens, then there's a final showdown. The final showdown is this wonderful prisoner's dilemma mechanic. So each of you gets 3 little voting cards. So it's either going to be, hey, let's share 2 and 2, even Steven. And so you could, if you both play share, you both get 2.
Got it.
If someone plays share and someone plays steal, they're going to take all 4.
Mm-hmm.
If you both steal, neither of you get anything,
right.
But one gold goes to everyone else at the table. Or if you're close to winning and you just want to be sure you're going to get 1, you can always grab 1 and go. Mm-hmm. And then the other player, no matter what they play,
get the rest
are going to get 3.
Mm. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then, cool, so you play multiple rounds until the player hits the maximum gold to win the game, right?
That's right. And quite honestly, when you get eliminated, and again, that'll happen several times during the game, the downtime, if you're using it wisely, you're already starting to conspire and negotiate for the next round while they continue to play.
Right. Craig's got a lot of... Well, that's the thing, because as someone starts getting coins, now most of the table is going to start conspiring against them, right?
That's correct.
Right.
So they'll be, they'll try to cut deals. They'll say, "Oh yeah, no, yeah, let's get that guy." Meanwhile, everyone knows they're coming after you. So,
right.
Well, I lied.
It's just
Curt.
right there out in the open.
I lied, Curt. I said J'accuse was the most cutthroat game. This might be the most cutthroat game now.
I got to tell you, this is like taking, oh my God, cash and guns and diplomacy.
Right.
And smashing them together.
Right, because there's going to be all kinds of... I mean, this is evil. So now this is coming out before Gen Con, you said.
That's right, for Origins.
And this handles up to 12 players, which sounds really awesome. And is it a small... I would assume it's a relatively small box, right? Or is it portable?
Yeah, it's fairly small box. It's really all cards in there. Mm-hmm. But I did make the box just a little bit bigger because all those voting decks... If they just were all smashed into one pile, it'd be a real pain. So there's a plastic organizing tray, so you can keep each player's set separate.
Very cool.
This is the kind of game, by the way, you could start the game with 8 players, and people see you playing it, and they're like, "Oh, can I get in?"
Yeah, right.
And yes, you pull the deck out of the box, you hand it to them, and you're off and running. So
sweet. Cool. And then how long? And you said the games are pretty quick. What's the price point going to be? Have you got that figured out yet?
Yeah, that's going to be $25.
Nice. Well, these are great. Wow. Curt, you got some great games coming out. They sound awesome. Very, very innovative.
Great value, too.
And the value's right there, too. And they're all portable. I love it.
Yeah. It was actually a fairly intentional decision. I wanted to, we did Student Bodies, which was, a big, expensive game. And I really think that these smaller games that are a little bit more quick playing, a little bit easier to get into, a little bit broader base, like anyone can get into them.
Right.
I think this is right where the heart of design is right now, especially for my company. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, Curt, that's awesome. I'm so excited for all these games. I can't wait to get my hands on all these new ones.
It's crazy. That's crazy the way you just keep tapping into the same kind of evilness in a whole new and exciting way.
I tell you what, it's fun to all of a sudden find all these like new ways to twist people up and have fun with them.
That's awesome.
And the fact that there are other people out there who get that same enjoyment, and I'm being able to publish their games too is terrific.
I just think it's great that someone comes up with one of these evil games and someone else says, well, you got to go to talk to Curt because
exactly
evil backstabby games, so you got to go talk to Curt. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Curt, thank you so much for filling us in on what you guys have been up to over there at Smirk and Dagger, and we're going to take a quick break here, and we're back with more Curt and other stuff.
Because you can never have too much Curt Covert.
You really can't.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, totalfangirl.com. Our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6Generation and you too can support the show. Thank you very much to everyone who does decide to head over that way. So this week, a show that I really liked got canceled, and it has me sad. Agent Carter, and it was doing really good. The first season, I think people were really into it, and everyone was very excited about it, and there was a lot of support for it. And rah women, everyone was excited about that too. I really just liked the character, and I thought she was fun, and I enjoyed watching her antics. And going back in time to that era is kind of neat with the looks and the styles and the way people behaved. So I really enjoyed the show, and I thought they did a good job. And then this season, they changed things up a little bit, and they took her out to California, and things got a little weird, and we were sticking with it. In fact, the girls were watching it with us too, and they really liked it. They actually stopped watching, and we've pretty much stopped watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That sort of lost us. I don't know what went wrong there, but we decided, nope, we're done. So we really were enjoying Agent Carter, but then I read months ago, oh, it could be in trouble. And then the official word came that the show is gone. So I'm kind of sad about that. So it's just happened. I think it was yesterday afternoon, maybe the day before that I found out. So I'm still harboring that sadness of having a show that you really like get canceled when you think it might have a chance. It's not like Firefly painful. That was like the most horrific cancellation in the history of cancellations. But it's still a sad thing when you have a show that you like and characters in a universe that you enjoy disappear. So I'm curious what you guys really like on TV that's been canceled. I know Firefly was one of the worst cancellations ever, and no one will ever forgive the powers that be for that horrible affront to all of geekdom in deciding to cancel Firefly. And I'm sure there won't be quite the same outrage over Agent Carter, although there is a little bit of outrage about it and a lot of sadness. So if you feel like it, let me know. I'd be curious to see. Email me and tell me what your favorite show that you loved got canceled, and how long did it take your heart to heal from the trauma? We're still mourning the loss of Agent Carter in this household, and hopefully another show will suddenly appear to take its place in our hearts. But I don't know. I really am going to miss Agent Carter.
Oh, hey, you know what that sound means? That is the heraldry. Is that right? Herald? No. It sound heralds. Heralds.
It's a horn heralding the arrival of Vic the Viking from the War Store.
That's the phrase I was trying to utter unsuccessfully. So excellent. And that means we are, in fact, heading over to one of my favorite shopping sites on the internet, thewarstore.com, with this brand new layout, easy to find stuff. And, the War Store carries all the board games you'd need, including the new hotness coming out this summer from our friends at Gale Force 9, Star Trek Ascendancy, already on pre-order.
Trek.
Yeah,
Star Trek Ascendancy.
Yeah. I'm just so excited I can't even speak. That's really where we are.
I think that's that's a movie that's going to be on Fox over the summer.
So that looks awesome. And, of course, all kinds of great dice and gaming aids. But where they got their start over at the War Store is the miniatures. And they still shine in that area particularly.
Craziness. And they've got this beautiful new scrolling headline where you've got 5% off for spring cleaning. But that'll be over by the time you hear this. Check out the expanded order, special order section. Star Trek Ascendancy. Marvel Universe. Malifaux.
Yeah.
Team Yankee, Russ's new secret love.
Yeah, all the games.
The War Store. Look at that. It just goes on and
Wars,
on and
War
on.
Machine,
There's a song in there
Hordes.
somewhere.
Let's say you were getting all excited about the new Mark III War Machine coming out. You want to make sure you can order all your War Machine stuff. They got all that there, too.
It's all there.
They got it over at thewarstore.com. And remember, not only do they have some of the best prices on the net, but that's not even what it's all about. It's all about the fantastic service and the knowledge that when you order it from the War Store, you're going to get it, and you're going to be a very happy customer. So head on over
to... And it's people. It's people, not computers. That's the key. Our robot overlords have not yet taken on the War Store.
Craig's just bitter because the scroller doesn't work.
That's true.
Thewarstore.com.
This is the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. And, it wouldn't be an episode without a game review. Actually, that's not true. Sometimes we do that. But I thought it'd be fun to do another one in here. And this time, Craig was really excited, actually, to get to the table. Dark Moon, right, Craig?
And hearing nothing but good things.
That's right. It's actually formerly known as BSG Express. Kurt, you aware of this? BSG
I
Express.
am, yes. And that's because originally it was the shortened version of Battlestar Galactica, the board game.
That's right. Everybody loved Battlestar Galactica. It really did a great job. While Shadows over Camelot was probably the first really, really well-themed, great components, traitor mechanic game, Battlestar Galactica brought it to the forefront with the equally amazing, if not more impressive components, and the theming that was just so great with the highly popular series that featured the fact that there could be people amongst you who were not with you, right?
Right.
And then, of course, because people loved it so much, the only downside to Battlestar Galactica was it takes a little time to play the game. Even with moderate player counts, it can still take several hours, sometimes 3 to 4. And so someone thought it'd be a great idea to make a shorter version of this, and it eventually morphed into Dark Moon, published last year by Stronghold Games, our friend Stephen Bonacore over there at Stronghold Games. And the game is indeed for 3 to 7 players, and Craig and I did, in fact, play it. I played several times now. Most of the games I've played are 3 to 5 players, but I did manage to get a 7-player game in. Estimated game length is an hour to an hour and a half, and I would say that is pretty accurate. It took us, Craig, I want to say 2 hours, but that was explaining the rules. People ordered nachos. We waited and ate the nachos. There was distractions. I think if everybody's focused and doing it, even with learning the rules, you're under an hour and a half, and I think everybody knows what they're doing. Even a 7-player game with traders in about an hour is pretty awesome, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And now the game length, does that get shorter with the less players you have?
I think no. What's interesting, once we go through the mechanics, Kurt, when we get to the summary, ask me that question again.
All right.
Because once you understand the mechanics, I think there's some interesting things about how this game scales with more players. You have less turns, but it doesn't mean you do less.
Yeah.
And because each player has the opportunity to advance the success or failure situation, more players just means more gets done per round.
Okay.
But because everybody's engaged in everybody's turn, it doesn't feel like you're doing less, I don't think. I'm curious to see what Craig thinks of that. But anyway, so MSRP, $59.96, $60 for those of you who like to round up. Now, to set the mood here, I would like Curt to give us a dramatic reading of the flavor text on the inside cover of Dark Moon.
I don't have the box?
Oh, wait, Curt, if you scroll down in the show notes, you have those in front of you?
I don't know if I've got it. Oh, so you're just going to have to go.
I will have Craig. Craig, can you do the dramatic reading of the...
Sure.
All right, Craig. You give a dramatic reading, and Curt, you can rate the dramatic reading after we're done. Craig, give us a dramatic reading of the inside of the box cover here for Dark Moon.
Welcome to Dark Moon. The Noguchi Masaki Interplanetary Mining Corporation welcomes you to its outpost on Titan, the Dark Moon of Saturn. You will be joining an experienced crew of miners, technicians, and adventurous souls who live to experience all the wonders that our solar system has to offer. Purpose, loyalty, camaraderie, friendship, and sacrifice all await you as a new and valued member of the Noguchi Masaki family. You are a crew member on a deep space mining expedition to Titan, the Dark Moon of Saturn. During a routine excavation, an incident occurs whereby some of the crew become infected with an unknown virus and become paranoid, deceitful, and violent, trying to destroy the others.
That's right. So you're basically trapped on a moon base with 3 to 7 of your closest friends who now may in fact be infected by a virus and trying to kill you, the base, and everyone you know.
2 to 6, but
yes,
who's counting?
2 to 6. I think it's 3 to 6. But anyway, all right. So
is it 4 player? Is it 4 to 7?
3. Oh no, you're right. It's 2. It's yourself, including
just
yourself.
Saying, it was a math joke.
All right,
you yourself admit that math jokes seldom work. So
0, 7, 7, 3, 4. All right. So,
hey, yes. Guys, I found the notes, so I'm going to do a dramatic reading of what's in the box.
All right, Curt.
Cool.
First, give us the dramatic opening sounds. When you open a box of a space station game, what does it sound like?
Board. 1 rule book. 10 player shields. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That was actually very good. I was going to let you go there.
I was okay with it.
So, yeah, there is quite a bit in the box, and I do want to talk about value here after we go through this list. I'm not going to list everything, but a few things that are pretty cool here. So you do get, as Curt just mentioned, of course, you get a playing board. More about that in a second. You get the rule book. I don't love the rule book. It's full color. It's very thematic. There's no table of contents. There's no index. It is a little tricky to find some rules, but once you read through it, the game's not super complicated, though, and that's the good news. And there's plenty of great teaching videos out there, too, and everything's pretty referenceable. But learning the game the first time from the rulebook is not as easy as I would like, unfortunately, but it's serviceable. You do get these player shields, so each player is going to have a little screen. There's a player shield for each of the playable characters, of which there are 7, and which is thematic and also has these references in the back of what you can do your turn. So there's nice quick reference material right there on the player screens. They do stand up on their own, and that's important because it need to have the ability in this game to conceal what's going on behind your screen. Namely, you are making dice rolls, hidden dice rolls, kind of like a dungeon master does. You're making hidden dice rolls behind your screen, and you are then using those results to inform the rest of the table what you're going to do. So it's very important you hide those rolls. It also comes with plenty of cards for all kinds of different things. More about that when we get into the mechanics of the game. It comes with tons, 29 custom 6-sided dice, of which 14 are black, which are what we call the strong dice. They're the better dice. There are 14 red, what we call the weak dice, and they're not quite as strong as the strong dice. And then there's one blue die, which is a super special, really good die, but only available to the base commander, right? Mm-hmm. So the base commander has access to that bad boy. There's then plenty of wooden cubes, various sizes and colors. I think about, probably so close to like 20 of those or so. There's a bunch of tokens, of course. There's more about those where they go in as well. And a bunch of indicators as well that go in front of your screens, which is pretty cool. Your screens have this little tab on the front that show how many dice, sort of like your hand size, but in this case, it's your dice pool max size. And then these cool little tokens that add on to those that show you have additional dice beyond your normal amount or removing some of those dice too. So plenty of tokens to handle everything.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice mechanic.
So what do you guys think of the value in the box? I know, Kurt, you haven't played, but you've seen some of the stuff on there. Craig, you've played the game. You've seen what the components look like. Yep. What do you think of the value for $60?
So I think $60 is a no-brainer. If it looks like the kind of game that you're going to like, then there's absolutely no reason not to jump in at that price point.
Yeah, it's got plenty of heft to it. It's clear where the money went. It's not like they didn't spend it on a license, right? They could have. It could have been more expensive if they had BSG still on it, for example, even. But no, I think it's a good value for what's in there.
Yeah, and what I really like about it too, I think you're right. I think with all those custom dice plus the shields, plus a lot of cards. Well, my favorite thing about the game is actually the game board itself because it's full of themes. So the game board looks like a control panel. So
it looks like 1970s.
Yeah, it looks like
the alien ship.
Yeah, it looks like a beat-up control panel you might find in, as Kurt described it, a late 70s, early 80s sci-fi film with gauges and stuff, right? And these tokens go right onto so one of them's like a little dial, one of them's like there's a bunch of like TV monitors along the top, 4 TV monitors. There's like a status board with all green lights, but these tokens and things you put on there, they're not just square tokens, right? They're shaped to fit into these things. So one of the dials is the shield damage, and it looks like a little shield meter, and with no tokens on it, looks like the shields are fine. But as you add tokens, it looks like there's this red line moving up in a circle around the dial, like the dial's getting worse. The tokens for the status board turn the lights from green to red, with also the flavor text as well as the game effect text for those things being down. And there's even like a little monitor for life support, and as people get injured, their little faces come up like they're on the screen, like you can see them in their little beds hurt. So it's a very cool visual, sort of, and the available dice pools and the used dice pools are like lockers, half open, half closed. So the game board lets you feel like you're sitting there staring at a space station's control panel, which is pretty slick.
Yeah.
So I love that part of it. It definitely oozes theme, which is really nice. So that's the game board. Let's talk a little about how we set this game up. There's a little bit to it, but I do like the fact that it's a little harder. Some of the traitor mechanic games, you can screw this up pretty easily, right? And you can ruin the whole game. The good news is the game's not super long, so if you do make a mistake, it's not that hard. Realize halfway through the game, you got to restart. It's not like you're, 3 hours into Battlestar and realize you forgot to put the second traitor cards in the deck or something. So with this, it's like, oh, hey, there's very clear rules in the book about how you set the game up. It's very simple. So you flop the board down, you add a couple shield tokens and a couple outpost tokens. So you start with some issues on the control panel, right? So there's a little bit of shield damage going on right now. There's some blinking lights on the outpost. These are going to be these tokens, by the way, that go on. Some of these areas are face down and they're random. So you're going to take one of the face down tokens and put it out. So when you start the game, there's always 2 things on the outpost screen that are in trouble, but they're not always the same 2 things, which makes a little different starting condition every time. You're going to make sure you get the fatigue token pile face down to the side. No one starts fatigued. Everybody's healthy at the beginning of the game, but things will happen that will change that. You do want to have some cubes. You want to put one of the cubes to this track near the bottom that's called the suspicion track. And as the game progresses, people get more and more suspicious of each other. Both literally, meaning in your mind, you're like, well, what is Craig doing? He's really been hurting us this entire game. He clearly is infected. But also in the game mechanics, there's actually a forced suspicion meter that goes along. So you're going to put a cube on there. You're going to deal out the characters. So there's a great deck of all the characters. You deal them out to everybody who's playing, one for each person. So if there's less than 7 players, you won't be using them all. And you're also going to pull from the fatigue token pile one random fatigue token, and whoever you pull, that person starts out as the base commander and gets a special base commander card to indicate he is the commander. Note about this is not a mistake. This is actually in the rulebook. One of the players has a special ability who cannot become fatigued, which means he has no fatigue token, which also means he cannot actually start the game as the commander. Sort of interesting side note.
Oh, there you go.
But what's cool, I should mention that brings me to the idea that what's cool about each of these player cards, not only does it feature a little picture of your guy, you get the matching player screen, which features a picture of your guy, their role, and their name. So you start actually calling the players by their names. You see the screen in front of them. You're like, oh, hey, Steve, it's your turn, even though his name's actually Mark or something. And what's also cool is on the bottom, on each player's little card, it tells you it's got a picture, it's got their flavor text, and it's got a special ability. So each character has a unique power that comes to the game and brings a little bit of bonus to them. Also, you're going to go ahead and give each player a starting dice pool, and it's the same for everyone except for the commander. So everybody gets 2 black dice and 2 red dice. They go behind their screen. And as I said, most of the time during the game, most folks have a dice pool of 4, but that can change. The commander, however, gets a bonus die. He also gets a special blue die because he's the commander. And that's a really powerful die that's important for the commander to have a little bonus power. Hopefully the commander is not one of your infected players, unless you're infected. More about that in a second. Now, we got the dice. You also get an in and out token. So there's these round tokens that on one side it says in, and one side it says out. More about those later. Make sure everybody's got one of those. We've got the commander already assigned. We're also, remember those monitors I described on the top of the game board? Those are the events you got to work your way through. And in the beginning of the game, you know the very first event on the far left monitor, and you know the very last event, the final event. So you randomly draw the final event from a special deck of final event cards, and you put it face up on top of the monitor. Another little bonus for the artwork here. The actual artwork on these little cards that go on the monitors have the little lines through them like they're old, cheap LED screens, right? So they kind of look like they're little images on the monitors, which is pretty cool. And that's going to give you there's going to be a set of squares on this card, and what you're going to do is as you successfully complete tasks, you're going to put cubes on these squares, and the idea is once you fill all the cubes in on a given task card or given event card, you've then completed the event and you move on to the next card, and your goal is to complete 3 different events and 3 different monitors, moving from left to right until you finally tackle the final event card, complete all the boxes on that card, and you win the game. The nuance to this, though, is in addition to trying to complete those tasks, there's a little bit of special rules on the bottom of these cards that have usually a detrimental effect, but not always. Sometimes it's a good effect in play when that event is in action. So in the beginning of the game, all you know is the final event, and then to put the first event down, what you do is the commander is going to draw 2 event cards, look at them secretly, and pick one and put it face up. And he's probably going to say something like, oh, man, both these events are pretty tough. This is the lesser of 2 evils. He could be lying. He could have a really great one on one hand and put the bad one out. Or the reverse could be true. So right from the beginning, you don't know. And I want to make sure I got my sequencing right. Before you do that, though, you're actually going to deal out the infected and uninfected cards. So you're going to build a deck of roll cards, which very similar to Battlestar or Shadows over Camelot. These cards are going to have on them either you're uninfected or you are infected. And the number of infected cards that go into the deck is based on the player count. So look in the rule book for that information. And then you're going to shuffle them up, deal them out to each player. Each player all simultaneously looks at this card, remembers what they are, and that's the thing. One thing you want to make sure you check is if you are uninfected, i.e. a good guy, you have no special rules on the card. It just says you a little paragraph about how cool it is to be a good guy. If you're infected, there's a little paragraph of what that means, but also at the very bottom, there's a special impact you have when you reveal, if you reveal when you're not in quarantine or jail. But that effect is different depending on the infected card you get. So the different infected players have different sort of bonus powers.
Okay.
Making sense so far, Curt?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we've dealt that out. We got that. The last thing we're going to do is get the task deck up. This is a deck of cards that each player at the end of their turn are going to reveal a task. We're going to try to solve it. And The deck you use is different depending on the player count. So again, just grab the appropriate colored deck depending on the number of players in the game, shuffle that up, put it on the side of the board, and you're pretty much ready to start. Does that sound right, Craig?
Mm-hmm. It's all true and proper to my memory.
Right. So we're all set up. So it's not too complicated to set up. Interesting notes. You never change your role throughout this game. So once in the beginning of the game, you know you're working for the good guys or you're working for the bad guys. That never shifts. Yeah. The goal of the game, before we get into the rules here, the good guys want to complete get a blue cube on each of the squares, on each of those event cards in the TV monitors on the top of the board. So they finish the first monitor. Once that happens, the commander is going to draw 2 more cards, pick the one he thinks is best, put it in the next monitor. We're going to try to solve all those. Keep going to get, so there's actually 3 of those, and then the final event. Work your way through the final event. We finish all those cubes on there, we win.
Right.
The bad guys are trying to make the base fail before that happens. And there are 3 different ways the base can fail, and they're based on the 3 main sort of readout areas on the board. There's the shield status sort of gauge, and if that ever fills up, the shields are down, the base is destroyed from solar radiation, we lose. The good guys lose, and the infected win. The other one is there's the outpost dashboard, which actually shows all the systems of the outpost and which ones are down. If that ever fills up, same problem. So you don't have to wipe out all these systems. Just any one of these systems getting maxed out, you lose. And the third one is the sick bay or life support area. There's a little monitor there also and a bunch of circles in there. And if that ever gets filled up, basically all the characters become fatigued. That basically means they're all on life support, and again, you also lose. So the infected are trying to hit any one of these areas, and so what you're trying to watch out for is when the infected reveal, typically the reveal says, add a token to a specific area of the station. So
there's 3 infected cards, right?
Yes, and there's 3.
And there's 1 for each of these areas you're trying to keep repaired.
And so when the infected reveals, he or she, if they're not in quarantine, so if they're out in the open and everybody doesn't know who that person is and they say, I'm infected, they immediately add a token to one of those 3 areas. So the infected are watching. And if you're ever having a situation where you let it go a little long and you're like, oh, well, we've got 4 people down, we're 1 away from losing on the life support and we're 1 away from losing on the control panel. Let's better fix the control panel. And the next guy's infected and he hits the life support. Yeah. Boom, you just lost the game. So
if you're 1 away from losing any of those 3 things and you don't know who the infected are, then you're pretty good chance you're going to lose the game.
Right. So you got to watch for that. And it does scale here because when there's less players in the game, there's less infected. And so when there's less infected, it means that not all 3 of the gauges could be killed by an infected person. So in a 7-player game, it means all 3 infected are out and all 3 of them have the capability to hit all 3 of those gauges. So you are a little more exposed, obviously, with more traders there. So it's pretty interesting. Now, the trick, though, is to get those infected quarantined. So if they reveal when they're quarantined, they do get a couple of cool infected powers, but they don't get to immediately activate the power on their card, which means they don't get to pop that out. So if you reveal when they're quarantined, it does change what they can do, but it's not as bad as if they revealed in the open when they're unknown. All right. So goals making sense, Curt?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about what the game turn looks like. So during your game turn, there's really, I think, like about 4. Well, it feels like 3 major steps. Although if you look in the book, it's like 5. The first thing you're going to do is retrieve your dice. So what does that mean? Well, as I mentioned before, on the front of your player screen, there's a little tab that shows 4 squares, which are the symbol for dice in this game. And that tells you your current hand limit. Now, there are additional tokens you can add to that either add to that or cover those squares up. So as things happen in the game and change how many dice, the max dice count you have, you're going to change that. But at the start of your turn, you look at that. Typically, it's 4. You look at the current dice you have behind your screen, and you're going to say, okay, I've only got 2 dice behind my screen. My max hand size is 4. I can pick 2 dice from the available dice pool and put them behind my screen. Now, what's interesting about this is, in the available dice pool, or whatever the dice that are out there that people have spent this turn, sometimes it's a nice balance of both black dice and red dice. And you can pick which you want to have more of. Sometimes it's not, and you're stuck with just a bunch of red dice out there, and you really want a black die, but you got to take what you can take. So that's also interesting right there, and I'll get how you spend dice in a second. So you're going to retrieve your dice, then you're going to perform an action, and that action is, there's a bunch of different actions you can do here. The most typical action you're going to do is repair, which basically means you're going to make a hidden die roll and try to remove a token from one of those 3 systems I mentioned. So you can try to repair the shields, the outpost itself, or go to life support and try to get somebody unfatigued, right?
Right, and your special ability as a character might have an ability that allows you to repair one station better than another.
That's right. So how this works is, let's do a repair real quick, because it's kind of one of the core mechanics of the game. You get to roll for a repair action, and this is right on the back of your character screen, too, so you don't forget it. It says right there, repair, and what it does. So for a repair action, you can roll a maximum of 3 dice. And by the way, it does state in the rulebook very clearly, you always must roll the maximum dice you can roll. So the reason it says up to 3 dice is you may only have 2 dice behind your screen. But let's say for a minute you have all 4 of your dice. You can pick any 3 of the dice you have available, and you secretly roll them behind your screen. You do tell the table, okay, I'm going to go try to repair the outpost. I'm rolling. And you roll your 3 dice behind your screen. Now, in terms of whether you get a plus or a minus, that's the same odds on all 3 dice, all 3 colors of dice. That doesn't change. And what you're looking for here in a repair roll is at least 1 positive die. So you roll the 3 dice behind your screen, and you're going to take one of those dice and show it to the table out from your screen and say, yep, I rolled 1 positive number. You can't lie. So you can lie, but you have to use the dice you actually roll. So if you roll 3 dice and you get 2 positives and a negative, for example, you're going to submit 1 die and say, this is what I rolled. Now, if you're a good guy, you're going to say, look, I rolled a positive number and pull it out. But if I rolled a negative number also, I could say I only rolled negative numbers, but then show a negative number and say, oh, I'm sorry, guys, I rolled 3 negative numbers. I failed to repair. But you may have rolled 2 positives and a negative, but just chosen to use the negative die. So you must choose one of the dice you actually rolled, but you could fib and say I rolled all negative numbers when you actually didn't, right? Yeah. Now, this it starts to engender suspicion because it is very easy to roll all negative numbers. In fact, it's more likely because all the dice are more weighted for negatives. Yeah. And even if you're a good guy, you could easily roll all negative numbers and say, oh, crap, sorry, guys, I really did roll negative numbers. I'm sorry. Yeah. But anyway, so repairing is pretty simple. You roll 3 dice. You must submit one of the dice from your behind your screen to the used dice pool. And if it's positive, you get to remove a token from the system you declared on. If it's negative, you do not. So you failed to repair. One note, as Curt mentioned, most of the characters have a power that basically says, you're the doctor. So whenever you try to repair life support, you automatically retrieve 1 die, which basically means if I'm the doctor and I do a repair check on life support, not only do I get the result, but I get to take that die I just used back. Right.
Which could be important later during tasks.
It's very important because it's always good to have dice behind your screen, even when it's not your turn.
Right.
More about that in a little bit. So the first thing you got to do is you can do 1 action. Repair is the most common action you can do. You can also call a vote, which basically means try to put one of the players in jail in lieu of doing a repair action or in quarantine. You can also issue an order, which basically lets you give your turn to essentially one other player. And they can either retrieve some dice or they can take 2 actions. So this can be actually a way to give someone bonus actions. So if you're starting to suspect, let's say you don't have a good pool of dice right now, you have for whatever reason, or you have a bad mix of dice, let's say you're all red dice and you're a good guy, and you're pretty confident that Curt is actually a good guy, I could give Curt an order and say, Curt, go take 2 actions, and Curt gets to do 2 things in a row, which could be huge. But I got to be pretty confident Curt's on my side, right?
Right.
The other thing you do is something called lone wolfing. So lone wolf is the way you can actually go ahead, normally to get those blue cubes on the event cards to actually solve those events and actually win the game, you must complete tasks, which is something coming in a moment. But you can do something called lone wolfing, which is kind of like a repair roll. You roll it behind your screen up to 3 dice, and you need to get 2 positive numbers. And if you get 2 positive dice, you submit both those dice, and you then get to put a blue cube on the task card. So that's so lone wolfing is kind of a cool way to get ahead on the final objective. But because you need to get 2 dice with positive numbers, it's actually very hard to do. And you also must always submit 2 dice, even if you roll some negatives. Yeah. So you're losing 2 dice on the action as well. So it's expensive and risky. But if everything's looking pretty good in the systems, you got nothing else to do, it's not a bad call. Or you're near winning the game, maybe it's worth a shot. The last thing you can do as an action is you can reveal. So if you are one of the infected players, you can choose at this moment to reveal. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're revealing and you're not in quarantine when you do it, you get the bonus powers on your infected card kick in. So that's basically it. It sounds complicated, but really for your action, you can either make a repair roll, very quick and easy, looking for a positive number, or call a vote, or issue an order, or lone wolf. Most of the time, you're going to do repairs, right? Yeah. After you've done that, now it's time to do a task. And the task is the part where everybody at the table participates. And this is really the meat of the game. The tasks are the part where even if it's not your turn, it's just as important you be engaged and involved. So there's this task deck. The current player draws 2 cards from the task deck, looks at both of them, and then says, well, I have a tough choice here, guys, but I'm going to choose this card. He puts 1 card face up, and the other card goes face down on the discard pile. No one sees what the other card was. So he could put a really hard task to complete or an easy task to complete out there, depending on what his feelings are. There are basically 2 types of task cards. One of them is sort of a text wall with a bunch of instructions. The other one is basically 2 big numbers. One of them is the system that's about to malfunction. It's called a malfunction card. This is the most common card. So typically it's a malfunction situation, and it says something like the shields are malfunctioning or the outpost. It's one of the 3 meters, right? The shields, the outpost board, or life support. They're malfunctioning. It gives you a target number. It says outpost difficulty 6, right? And then at the bottom, it tells you the consequences for failing. It usually says 2 tokens. There's 1 token or 3 tokens, which basically means you've got to get 6 points to succeed. If you do succeed, great. And nothing happens, and you also get to put a blue cube on the task, and on the event card. So that's how you actually win the game. So completing tasks, succeeding in a task, does 2 things. 1, it prevents something bad from happening, and 2, it actually advances you towards winning the game. So this is why I think more players don't really slow the game down, because every single player's turn can put you 1 step closer towards either winning the game by getting another cube on the success track, on success event cards, or can put a thing on the board and get you closer to dying. So 7 players, yes, you get to turn yourself, a full turn yourself less frequently, but there's 7 players causing 7 more steps to succeed before you goes back to you again. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you're going to reveal this task. Now what happens once the task is revealed and we say, oh God, we need to get a 7 to succeed, or we're going to take 3 tokens on the outpost. And by the way, the outpost board only has 5 slots. So you're taking 3 tokens on the outpost board. You're already dangerously close to dying. And by the way, there might already be a token on there. In fact, the game starts with 2. So you could be dying right here. And if you're not, you could be within 1, and one of the traitors could reveal, and all of a sudden you're dead. So the 3 token cards are really scary. And if someone's picking one of those and putting it out there, suspect that guy. Right? So it's out. It's got a target number. Now, starting with the player whose turn it is, you got to decide if you're going to be in or out. In means you're going to do a roll and contribute a dice to the result. And you're going to take a sum of all the dice contributed, and that number you're hoping is equal to or greater than that target number on the task card, which remember was a 6.
Right.
If I say I'm out, I am not going to roll any dice, and as a bonus, I can recover 2 dice up to my dice limit. So there's a great way during someone else's turn to get more dice in your pool if you spent a lot of dice either during your turn or against other task rolls and other prior players' turns. So there is this nice mechanic, even when it's not your turn, to be getting more dice and then participating in task rolls all the time. So you always feel like you're engaged and never really locked out. Right? So we're going to go around the table first. I'm going to lock in or out. Craig's going to lock in or out. Kurt's going to lock in or out. Everybody else locks in or out. Once that happens, right, then we go to the dice rolling. So starting again with whose player turn it is. If he is in, if he's out, he just gets 2 dice if he's got room for him and then moves to the next player. If he's in, though, he's got to roll. He can roll all of his dice. In fact, he's got to roll all his dice behind his screen.
Yep.
And he can contribute 1 or more dice to the pool. And there's a spot on the board that's dedicated to just the current task check. And there's also these cool little cubes that you put on this little meter on the board to tell you what your current sum is and what your target is. So you got this 1 cube on the 0, saying you're at 0 right now, and you got 1 cube on the target for 6.
Oh.
I'm going to roll my dice. Let's say I roll a bunch of negative numbers. I also roll a 3 and a 2. I'm like, oh, great, I got a 3 and a 2. So I put the 3 and the 2 out, and I then advance the 1 cube up by 5 because I rolled a 3 and a 2. So now we're 1 away of some succeeding. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Now, I can roll again with the remaining dice I have and put more dice in the pool. But if I do roll again, I must put a die in the pool. So I might feel pretty cocky after rolling a 3 and a 2. I'm going to roll again. I got 2 dice left. I roll again. I roll a -2 and a -3. Crap. So let's say I'm a good guy. I put the -2 in there. Now I'm back down to 3. Right? The sum is 3.
Yep.
So I'm stopping. So I'm done. I've also just burnt 3 dice, by the way. So I'm out of 3 dice. Now it's Craig's turn. Craig was in. Now, Craig does the same thing I just did, right, Craig?
Yep.
And you're faced with some tough choices here. Do you roll all your dice? You contribute. If you're a traitor, right, you're being like, well, I'm going to put a negative number here, but I tell everybody I rolled great or crappy.
Clearly.
Or you could be a good guy and roll crappy, right?
Could be.
Right. Now, because you have to put in 1 die minimum. So if you ever put in more than 1 negative die, you're pretty much telegraphing you're the bad guy. You don't have to put in more than 1 die.
Right.
So there is sort of a tell. Also, there's sort of a tell for good guys, and that is, you can have the illusion of being a good guy by putting in lots of dice that are positive because you're really stripping yourself of dice, but you're saying, I really want to succeed, right? So you can do that and be like, I'm all in. I'm not going to help any other test this term, but this is a really important one, so I'm going to really help out. Is it making sense so far, Kurt?
Absolutely.
Any questions about it?
No.
All right, so we go around the whole table. Those that are in keep putting their dice, have to roll. And the thing that's tough, too, is, let's say Craig was a good guy also. He rolls a +2. He puts the die in there. He gets us up to I was at 3. Now we're at 5. So we're 1 away from winning. So Craig's feeling like, we got this. I'm going to stop because I only got 2 dice left. That's not many dice to roll. They're mostly negative. There's 3 more guys that are in. We should be fine. So then Curt goes. He rolls. Crap, guys. Sorry, I rolled a -1. Now we're down to 4 again. Curt rolls all his dice again. No, I got this. Really rolls again. Crap, I rolled a bunch of negatives. I'm going to stop now. Now we're back down to 3 again. Well, crap. Now there's only 2 guys left. And assuming the first 3 guys who went there are all good guys, which Curt could be a bad guy based on what we just saw there, you keep going, right? So you could feel like you really got this nailed down and all of a sudden go to pants really quickly. Make sense?
Yep.
So the task is the core mechanic. And again, the thing to remember about tasks is don't forget, when you complete that task successfully, you get to put a blue cube on those event cards, and that's how you win the game. If you forget that, you're really hurting yourself, or the good guys are getting hurt. The other thing is, if you fail the task, then whatever the negative result is, almost always tokens on on another place, you put those on there, right? And if those tokens take you to the point where that place is full, you just lost, right? One other thing I should mention too is the consequences. We'll come back to that in a second. So does that all make sense? The task, because that's really the heart of the game. And once you've seen that and you've seen a repair action, you've really seen how dice work for the most part. So
now, the one thing though, obviously there's an honor system involved. So if I happen to be an infected and I roll all positive numbers,
you must put in a positive number. Yeah,
right. But it's behind a screen, there is the chance that someone's a jerk, I suppose.
There is. There's a little language in the rulebook that says, this game does feature hidden dice rolls with the honor system. So, yes, people could. That is one of the negatives of it. If you're playing with folks, it does require you have folks with some ethics.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
You can lie, but you can't. But you got to lie within the rules.
Yeah.
I guess that makes
correct.
sense. Right. Now, one other thing we should mention is there's some other interesting task cards, and I like these a lot. So one of them is like a test of faith. So one of these is actually a wall of text, and it says basically, instead of having the numbers on it, like the target number, it simply says, you can pick another player and have them permanently give you one of their dice. What that means is he's going to take a token that reduces his overall dice pool from 4 to 3. And I'm going to take a token that permanently increases my dice pool from 4 to 5, right? Mm-hmm. And he's got to give me a die right now of his choice. Now, if the player agrees to do that, then we count as succeeding the task and we get a blue cube on the event card. If the player declines to do it, we count as failing the task. Not only do we not get a blue cube, not only does the dice not change hands, but there's usually another negative in there, like one of the systems get hit, right? So this is a tough card because now you want to succeed and you're like, well, sorry guys, I really want to succeed, but I need to put this out there. And Craig, you're the commander, and you got the most dice right now. So would you mind, throwing me a bone here? So what'd you think of that card, Craig?
I thought it was neat. I was infected, so I'll put that out there. I mean, it's neat, but do you have any option? If you I guess if you're in the infected, you can't really say no, or everybody's going to be. I mean, I guess you could say no, but I don't know. I felt it came up twice. I used it on someone else, and then you used it on me.
Right.
And in both instances, I felt it was a no-brainer. And interestingly enough, in both instances, it was used on somebody who was infected.
Yes.
I used it inadvertently on someone else who was infected.
Right.
And they were like, oh, absolutely, have my die. And then use it on me. And I was like, absolutely, have my die. So, I don't know.
And what's interesting was the use on you made a little more sense because you already had the bonus commander die and the bonus die from Blake. So you were rocking 6 dice. So taking one from you seemed like a reasonable thing to do.
But why? Where would I say no, though?
Well, that's
what I'm saying.
It would be hard to say no, right? It would be very hard to say no.
It would be very hard to say no.
Unless you're like, well, you could say, I don't trust you. I think you're the traitor and I'm a good guy.
That's true.
I'm not going to give you dice. Right? And you can start trying to make the case that guy's the traitor.
True.
Right. You also don't forget, if it's your turn, you're picking 2 task cards and picking the one to resolve. So if you get that with another one, you can go the other route and not use that card. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But that's an interesting card. And there's a couple of the cards like that are sort of like special situation cards that I really think test the table, right? Which is pretty neat. So that's really one other thing to note is that on the bottom of some of the task cards it says suspicion track, and if that's on there, you got to advance the suspicion track cube. It's on a little track here, 1 down the track, and if it gets to the end of that track at the end of your turn, you must hold a vote. So you can vote to quarantine people one of 2 ways. Either as your action, instead of repairing something, for example, you can say, I'm going to hold a vote. I think Craig is infected. Let's put him in quarantine. And all the players vote. Or at the end of the turn, the current player's turn, if the suspicion track hits the end, you must hold a vote, and the current player must nominate someone to be put in jail.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting. So in our game, Ben, it was his turn. Ben had already had a couple rough rounds. He'd already gone around, and he had never put in a positive die in the pool. Now, he was claiming that he was rolling really badly, but I wasn't. I was suspicious. So Ben got this. Suspicion hit the point where Ben had to call a vote, and he did something very interesting. He said, "I nominate myself, right, to be put in quarantine." Now that seems very, it's possibly a good move. It's very nice of him, and he's basically saying, "Well, clearly I would nominate myself once I'm infected, so I'm not infected." But I thought he was infected, and apparently other tables did too. We all voted, and he went into quarantine.
Yes.
Now, how you vote is pretty simple. You secretly take one of your dice from your dice pool, either a black or a red die. A black die is a vote for innocence. A red die is a vote for quarantine. So you put this die secretly in your fist. You put your fist in the middle of the table. You count 1, 2, 3. Everybody reveals what's in their hand. They're either going to have a black die in there saying they're innocent. They're going to have a red die in there saying they're guilty. Or they could put no die in, which basically means they abstain. Now, one thing, this is the only time in the game you don't lose the die you use. So you get it back. But what's interesting about this is if the majority are black, you are okay. You either get out of quarantine or you don't go to quarantine. If the majority are red, you're going to quarantine. If it's a tie, the commander breaks the tie and decides what to do with you.
Right.
Now, if you go into quarantine, there's a special token for this, and it goes in front of your mat, and it basically covers up 2 of your dice. So your max dice count goes down to 2, which sucks. And there's a little list on the back of your card, on the back of your screen, of the things you could do in quarantine, and it's greatly reduced. Okay? So it's bad to be in quarantine. What's interesting about this, though, is you can only vote with the dice you have currently behind your screen. So if you've been, hoarding your pool and trying to optimize it for black dice, which are better for tasks, and you have no red dice, there is no way you can vote against anyone.
Right.
So you either have to abstain or vote for them. And this can be bad. So and the opposite is true also. So you kind of always want to have a little bit of a mix of some black and red dice, or you have no way to vote the way you want to vote, which is very interesting, right? So it's if you run out of dice, you can't really participate in anything, which is really bad. So keeping those dice, and that's a good reason to say when a task comes up, I'm down to 0 or 1 die, guys. I got to be out this task so I can replenish my dice pool for 2, and that's a pretty credible argument. Interestingly, in the game, you are not allowed to actually show how many dice you currently have.
Right.
So of course, you can count. You can watch people pick them up and stuff, and you can try to, card count everybody on how many dice they own. But you're going to forget, and you don't know the colors either. So at some point, I can't say, look, I'm right, and pick up my screen and say, look, I'm out of 0. I can say that, but you could not believe me. You could say, well, I don't believe you, or whatever. So that's interesting, too. So what's interesting about this game is there's all kinds of things that are happening all the time that you can make cases for why you're doing something in a wide variety of ways, which makes the subterfuge level extremely high.
Yep.
Is it making sense, Curt?
Absolutely.
So that's pretty much the core of the game. And once you play like 2 player turns, you've seen it all. Right. A couple things you should know is that as things progress worse and worse on these various meters, bad things do happen. So the shields, as the shield meter gets worse and worse and moves farther down the track, there are little icons on it. And whenever your shield meter advances 1 and there's next to an icon, you got to roll a die. And if the dice result matches the icon result, one of the other systems takes some damage. It's basically the radiation's coming through the shields and causing problems.
Gotcha.
The outpost panel is probably the trickiest one, because what happens there is every token that goes on the outpost panel has text on it that explains what now no longer can be done until it's fixed. So, for example, life support can be damaged and you can no longer repair life support. Or shield control can be damaged and you can no longer repair shields. Or the shuttle bay is damaged and you can no longer go on lone wolf missions. So even though you may not be very far down on the near death on the outpost room or outpost screen, you might need to go repair something because it might be a critical system. Like you might be near death on life support, and oh crap, the life support controls are down, and now I got to repair the outpost so I can fix life support. And so I'll do that, but I sure hope Craig's not infected because he's going to go next, and I'm expecting him to repair the life support, right? So there's some really cool, interesting conundrums that can happen there. Any questions? That's pretty much the whole game right there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, I was not able to get a copy of the game before the show, so I haven't had a chance to play it. But like you said, I have watched a bunch of videos on it and seen it played. But let me ask you this.
Sure.
because there are just a couple like thematic breaks that I just want to like kind of wrap my head around.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, I love the hidden traitor thing, and I know this was originally Battlestar Galactica, but right now it's themed almost more like The Thing.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of like that.
In the rules it says, you're violent and you're trying to betray everyone, but there's no attacking other players.
Right.
So that's a little sad based on the theme line I heard. And you're really just trying to get to the base fail. So it's
well, once you reveal, so there's a little bit of that in here, but it's a little bit abstracted. So once you reveal, you do have some special infected actions you can take on the back of your card. Because when you reveal, by the way, Curt, you actually change your screen.
Yeah.
So you actually remove your player screen that says "I'm the doctor," and you put in front this giant sort of red-brown screen that says "infected" on it.
Okay.
Which is actually pretty hilarious because Ben eventually revealed himself because I suspected he was infected, as many others did, apparently. And we kept him in quarantine so long, he finally just decided to reveal. Now, the downside to revealing is your dice pool is stuck at 2. So you're not much less dice, but you have these actions you can take, and the actions are damaging different systems. So during your turn, instead of repairing something, you can just damage something. So if you think about damaging life support fatigues a player, you could kind of imagine that as I'm attacking you, because now when you're fatigued, you flip your player card over and you lose your player power, and you can't participate. You can only put 1 die into the task pool instead of multiple dice in the task pool. So what you could do is greatly reduced. So you can kind of think of that as like one of the guys just clubbed you who's infected kind of thing. So I guess that's a little bit in there. And then the doctor is really good at repairing life supports. You can kind of imagine the doctor coming in and patching you up and getting you back into action.
Right.
So that's a little bit in there, but you're right. There's no direct hit points or player elimination or anything like that.
Right, and I think that's probably from the outside. The few tiny pushbacks are, and they're thematic. So like if you're quarantined, your power is to damage stuff. Well, you're quarantined. You're in jail. How are you doing that?
Well, you escape. So when you reveal, you're no longer quarantined. So once you reveal yourself, I guess the theory is you're breaking out of the quarantine, you've escaped, and now you're running around the station causing problems. The downside is that normally when you reveal, if you're not in quarantine, you get to immediately do your power, which would generally do 1 or 2 damage to one of the systems. If you're in quarantine, basically instead of doing that, you're breaking out of quarantine. So essentially you break out of the quarantine section, now you're running around as an infected, and you have all these actions you can do in later turns. So
okay.
But you're right. I mean, it's definitely abstracted. Yeah.
Yeah, and then fatigued, you can do less.
Yep.
So that's kind of like you're wounded, but I mean, fatigue just means tired. So
yeah. Well, it's a
if you're all tired, you lose. What?
Well, the theming is that if you think about life support, like oxygen's running out of the ship. Yeah. So you can imagine that there's less and less air. And when it gets down to 0, and one of the cool things is one of the guys can't be fatigued, and the reason he can't is he's the android, like an alien. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. So you basically can imagine the oxygen's getting lower and lower, and that's the reason. So when it's low enough where everybody's fatigued, there's so little oxygen that no one can really be at full power, you all die from suffocation, right? So it's kind of like that. Yeah, but you're right. It's not, you can tell, you can definitely see I think the theme fits really well, but you can definitely see through the curtains from time to time and see, hey, this is originally Battlestar that they rethemed.
Right.
Yeah. But that said, it seems really, really fun. I love the fact that that you're kind of always involved, even when it's not your turn, because going around the table can take some time, but you're constantly involved. So those task things are really engaging. And I'll say this definitely sounds like my kind of game, and I'm planning to pick it up in any case. So,
well, and really, Curt, one of the things is if you're taking the game in any kind of level of seriousness, right? Like, I mean, I don't mean like playing super serious, but I mean rather trying to deduce if someone is which side they're on. You kind of want to. It's almost like poker. You really got to watch their face when they roll those dice.
Sure.
Because what you want to see is, are they really upset when they rolled it and then they presented the die as if they're upset? or was there a moment of glee in their eyes, and then it turned to a frown, and then they put the die out that was negative, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to gauge. You're really watching it. It's very much like poker. You're really watching those eyes, and in fact, Ben was hilarious because Ben was the guy who was. I just would, and I didn't have a lot to go on. I just was my gut. I was like, Ben's infected, and Ben's sitting there going, I'm not infected. Look, my sunglasses are up. Would I hide my eyes? Would not hide my eyes if I was infected? I'd be hiding my eyes right now. So it was pretty hilarious. He was really trying to convince us that he was a good guy. So that's the whole game. Let's give it our final rating. So Craig,
Yes.
in the style of an infected astronaut,
Okay.
please describe the patent pending D6G rating system.
Okay. Sorry,
You
what?
sound infected.
I'm fine. I'm fine, Curt. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me at all. In fact, if I had to rate how I feel, Curt, then I feel like, let's say I had to give a rating to how I felt. I'm going to use a rating system that kind of goes in reverse. And the lower the number, Curt, the better I feel. Okay, so like if I said a 2+, like I would be rolling a die, and there's like a 4 in 6 chance that, or 5 in 6 chance that I feel great, that I am great, that I'm not infected. So why don't you look at Russ instead? Okay, so the lower, the better, and the higher, the more likely I'm infected. And I'm telling you, it's a 2+. And you know what? I'm going to throw in a reroll because I'm bad at math.
Nice. That is in fact the rating system. So it's the percent chance on a D6. You're going to like this game.
All right.
So, Craig, do you want to start? What are your thoughts of the game?
Sure. Okay. I love Battlestar Galactica, but it's been a very long time since I played it. Kurt's most recent comment, saying that I look infected notwithstanding, really kind of cut to the core, I think, of one of the main reactions I had to playing the game. I felt that there was a lot of loss of detail. So that like the tasks are very sort of generic. It's it doesn't say like, oh, this has gone wrong, it's something terrible, you've got to do this, or this is what's going to happen. It's basically the card is a very bland card that says you need 6 successes, and if not, this is the bad thing that happens, and whether or not the suspicion track advances. So I kind of like I was sort of like clawing for some fluff there. And there was the fluff has kind of been, and I think that's a lot of the reason it's much faster is the fluff has been extracted. So it's kind of like you see the card, you go for the card, you move on and you do the next thing. But I felt like that loss of atmosphere, I felt that sort of keenly. I don't like the fact that there's no way to hide whether you're helping or hurting. Right. So as a Cylon in Battlestar Galactica, the main thing that you're doing is when you throw those negatives into the tasks, which are very similar, it's cards instead of dice, you're hiding what you're doing 9 times out of 10. There's a very rare instance in Battlestar Galactica where somebody plays a card and everybody has to play their card face up. In Dark Moon, that's every turn. Right. So every turn, here you are, you're putting your die down. Everybody knows whether you just helped or hurt the cause. Which is a different. It's a difference. I don't know that it's worse or better than Battlestar Galactica, but it's a difference that I felt frustrated as the infected in our game. I felt frustrated not only because every time I put a negative die down, everybody knew it, but more importantly because I was at the mercy of my die rolling, and my die rolling is historically bad.
So you put a lot of positives in?
No. I'm always rolling negatives, and I'm like I played my dice roll straight. If I got a positive, I put it out there because I was putting so many negatives out because I had no choice that I knew people were going to be suspicious anyway, and there was. But so like just because of those negative rolls that I had no choice but to put out there, and they were obviously out there because there's no way to hide them. James, one of the guys that I met for the first time over this board game, was like, yeah, he's infected, like in a very sort of flippant, offhand way. Was like, yeah, he's infected. I was like, I don't even know you. What's going on? And
yeah, you know what? See, first of all, that's the mechanic of the game, and quite honestly, that could have happened to someone who was uninfected,
right?
And you're just guessing wrong.
Right, but what I'm saying is that it's a frustrated. I find it a frustrating mechanism in the game. Is what I'm saying. I found the game to be more, for whatever reason, more frustrating than I found Battlestar Galactica.
Well, but you wanted to hide, and it's not about hiding; it's about bluffing.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right, Curt.
I would say that's a semantic difference, but okay. If that means I'm being outvoted, so if you two decide that that's what you think, then that's fine. You can mention it when you're rating the game. Okay. And then the size of the screen was, I found that I was able to roll the dice behind the screen, no problem. But several of the people around the table were rolling dice that were bouncing out and they weren't being careful. And so I found that frustrating because I was like, I find myself looking at the ceiling every time it's somebody else's turn because and then maybe I missed a whole part of the game there too because I wasn't watching people's eyes because I could see the dice rolling out from behind their screen.
That could be.
So maybe there was that.
I think you leveraged
maybe it
their
was that I was hungry. Maybe it was because I was tired. Maybe I was thinking about Civil War, which I had just seen.
Maybe you're infected by an alien disease.
Maybe I was infected by an alien disease, but and then you don't even know what the disease is. So I don't know. So I'm gonna say that I didn't have the experience I wanted and thought I was going to have going into this because I had heard nothing but really great things. I'm going to say now I played with Russ, who I know well, and Blake, who is like Mr. Rules Lawyer Encyclopedia and will just flat out tell you when you're not doing something right. And then ended the game with, so who was the other infected that screwed it all up? Which was me. He didn't know it was me, but I was like, wow, that's kind of harsh too. And then there were 4 other guys who I had never met or played a game with. So I don't think that's an ideal mix for me. Most times I'm playing games because I want to play games with a game to me quite often is an activity to do with friends as opposed to like Russ, who has a blast playing games with anybody and meeting people and blah, blah, blah. I'm much more of an introvert than Russ is. Russ will have a blast with anybody, sit down at a table, never met him before, boom, let's play this game. Whereas I can do that, and I've played many games with people I didn't know, and I've had a really good time doing that. But my comfort zone is much more, especially in a game where I'm accusing people or being accused, it's my comfort level is much higher with people that I know.
So you're saying this is not an ideal game to play with new people?
For me, only for me. I'm not saying like you would love it. And I have no doubt the very first time you played, no matter how many people you'd ever played with before, you had a good time. So that's more on me. That's not on the game.
Got it.
Like I would say the same about Battlestar Galactica or, any of the other Traitor mechanic games. So I would say that I didn't for the no fault of the games, I didn't have the experience I was kind of hoping to have.
Right.
Now, if I can distance myself from that session, I think there's a really fun. I think the game is really fun. I think it's got a lot of great potential. If it was on a different day or with a different, whatever, and that's all on me, like I said. So I would say I'm going to rate the game. I'm going to say it's a 4+. And if you like Traitor games and things that go fast, I think that's going to be a +1 for you.
Cool. All right.
That's what I've got to say about that.
Well, Curt, I'll do mine, and then you can give us your thoughts on your desire to play the game here in a moment, and your final thoughts. You get to go last because you get to play cleanup because you're the guest. So there's a lot about this game I really, really like. I think the big thing I do like is what Curt, and the reason I jumped on with Curt so quickly there is because I think that's exactly right. The bluffing, the difference between this and Battlestar, and Shadows over Camelot is that it's hidden with what everybody contributes. So this game, it's known what everybody contributes. What's unknown was how much a choice you had and what you could contribute. And so it's just how well you can talk your way out of the fact you're contributing not what is best. So it's very much a bluffing, as Curt mentioned, it's very much a bluffing situation where you're saying, well, I rolled a bunch of negative numbers, guys, and I'm only putting in a -1, and I'm going to stop now because the dice aren't hot for me right now. Sorry. And how long you can pull that bluffing off, doing that over and over again. Or there's also a moment where, and the infected did make a good push at this. There's also a moment where the infected sort of have to go all in and kind of reveal and go at it. And so Ben revealed and got a lot of damage. Blake revealed and did a lot of damage to one of the systems, and we were close. I think we were like 1 away from dying. And it just worked out for us that we were able to stay in based on what happened with the dice rolls and everything else. But we could have very easily died there, and the infected could have won. There was a moment where it was really, really close, even after that entire game where it looked like we were having a cakewalk. So I like that. I love the zero downtime. I love the engagement. I really like the mechanics. of the dice. I like that I can have such an impact on the game even when it's not my turn. I love the fact that more players does not slow the game down. There's not very many games that are like that, so I really like that. And I do think that rolling the dice gives you a good excuse because the other thing to remember is the dice are weighted. It's a 1 in 3 chance you roll a positive number. So any given die is more likely to roll negative. So it's not very unlikely that you are going to roll 3 negative numbers. So it's a pretty easy case to make for yourself that, oops, sorry guys, I rolled all negative. Now all that said, I think and my favorite thing about the game is speed. I love the fact you can play a nice traitor game with a bit of depth to it and some really nice, bluffing stuff going on in there in about an hour. That said, it does not have anywhere near the theme of or the component quality of a Shadows over Camelot or Battlestar Galactica. I mean, those games definitely have a theme. You're launching out in Vipers and you're putting swords on the table and you got these cool models and those games definitely have a more overall experience, but they also play a lot longer, right? So there's more of an investment in there, and I've seen people get very mad at each other because they just played a game for 4 hours and felt like they got screwed at the end. So because the game is short enough, some of that bitterness maybe doesn't quite build up as much. But that said, I do like Battlestar still, and I do like Shadow still because they're such a great thematic experience. So it's missing a bit of theme, but what it makes up for in theme is some really slick mechanics that are pretty unique and not like anything I think you've tried. So I'm going to give this game a 3+. Okay. And I'm going to give it a +1 for anybody who likes traitor mechanic games, because I think this is definitely one you want to take a close look at if you like that sort of thing. So, Curt, what do you think after hearing all that? Your likelihood to A, want to buy it, B, want to play it, and C, overall, what do you think about it?
Right. So I clearly am not going to rate it because I haven't played it, but but I absolutely plan on picking this one up and playing it. I happen to like Hidden Traitor Games, and Battlestar is that 4-hour investment. I seldom have time where I can make that investment of time.
Right.
But sometimes I want something a little bit with a little bit more teeth than say the Resistance.
Right.
Something that just has a little bit more meat. Now this seems like it would fit that gap. So I like a lot of things that we were talking about with the tasks and being involved throughout the game, which could otherwise really slow the game. And I don't necessarily. I mean, I'll see how I feel after I play it. But when I've seen it played, I definitely got the idea of bluffing was the key mechanic. I kind of in my heart of hearts, like I said, I really wanted to push it harder towards the thing and have some kind of player v player stuff in there and other things that it was never designed to do, and to be more hidden rather than more bluff. But based on what I saw in the gameplay, I think I'd be satisfied with the way it plays out, because yeah, sure, everyone knows exactly how what dice you put out, and that's public information. But there's some finesse there. There are some people who are harder to read, and some people who are transparent. Or then they'll spin it around and they'll toy with you, and they'll make it look like they're gaffing when they're really not. So I think it's interesting, and so yeah, I definitely want to try it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, Curt, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the show today. We really, really appreciate it.
That's always a blast.
My pleasure, guys.
So if people want to find out more about you or Smirk and Dagger Games and what's up, where should they go on the internet?
Well, they can either go to our website, which is smirkanddagger.com, but largely Facebook. It's Smirk & Dagger is really where we post all our news, and of course that feeds into our website as well. And if you've got rules, questions, things like that, I also monitor Board Game Geek and everything else. So it's pretty easy to track me down.
Very cool, Curt. Very cool. Well, thanks again so much for joining us, and look forward to having you on again in the near future. And please, please, please send us a little email or tweet out how you like Darkmoon once you get a chance to get it to the table.
Oh, I absolutely will.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you, Curt.
Bye,
Take
Curt.
care.
Bye.
All right, thanks, guys.
This Did You Ever Notice is brought to you by our friends at Patreon. That's right, those listeners who have gone the extra mile and kicked in a quarter or a buck or $2 or $20 an episode and help us keep the lights on and the show rolling forward. Today I'd like to thank Jeffrey Morgan, Heng Ek Yong, Rick Underwood, Donnie Williams, and Matthew Trout. Thank you, and thank everybody who's taken the time to watch that disgusting, ridiculous video and then become part of the show. Do you ever notice how easy it is sometimes to forget even your most basic principles? You get a little passionate, you get a little hot under the collar, and the next thing you know, you're hating. And I feel like I've done that, especially this episode. And I'm referring specifically to Batman vs. Superman in regards to its relationship to Captain America Civil War, which I just saw again for the second time today. In fact, I didn't see the whole thing because I knew for a fact that I didn't have the time to see the whole thing with my ridiculous schedule the way it is, and I knew that I was going to have to pick up my son at 5:30, so I left school as soon as humanly possible, raced to the movie theater, caught the beginning of the movie, which was good, had to leave probably about 15 minutes before the end. And I knew that that was going to happen. And it was still worth it to me because I don't know when I'm going to be able to see it the next time because of my aforementioned ridiculous schedule. However, as good as I think Captain America Civil War is, and I do, and as disappointed as I was in Batman vs. Superman, which I was, I don't think that I should be talking the way I am about Batman versus Superman, because as a creative, well, I won't say creative, that sounds like I'm giving myself airs, but as a creator myself, I know how much you put into your work, no matter what it is, and I certainly wouldn't put my work up next to anything that was on even Batman versus Superman. And so I would like to step back my reaction to Batman versus Superman and say that I am very, very, very disappointed in the work that I saw in Batman versus Superman, while at the same time understanding how phenomenally how much work obviously went into it. And so I guess that is my point, is that it's sort of been haunting me, and nobody's called me out on it. Well, of course, nobody's heard it yet, so I don't know. But it's been haunting me because I know how much time and effort, and I know when you do a job, especially when I have no doubt that every person who worked on that movie was super psyched to be working on that movie and gave their absolute best. And I'm sure there's a variety of reasons for the fighting styles that were incorporated into the movie. And I'm sure there are people that don't like the elaborate, choreographed version of fight combat scenes. That didn't make any sense. That Marvel tends to lean towards. And I understand that also. And I have friends who enjoyed Batman versus Superman. None of them thought it was better than Captain America Civil War once they saw that, but that's neither here nor there too. I'm sure there are people out there who are, for a variety of reasons, more inclined to enjoy that movie than the movie that I enjoyed. And of course, I never, ever, ever expect that my opinion holds more water than anyone else's. And I at the same time, I know I'm entitled to my opinion, and I have a background in a lot of the various things that I've discussed. But at the same time, I don't want to belittle the time and the effort and the talent that I'm sure went into Batman vs. Superman. And I think that's all I've got to say about that. I don't want to belabor the whole point. There was something else I was going to say, and I didn't write it down. Oh, yes. Now I remember. I wanted to mention a little bit more about Dark Moon. Because likewise, I think I probably gave Dark Moon a bit of a bad rap in this episode. And I knew there was some other reason that was sort of like underlying my reason. See, I'm just not making any sense tonight. For not having as fun a time with the game as I thought I was going to. And I forgot that the venue where we played the game, again, at the local tavern where we've been, well, I've less and less, actually, have been playing games. And so rather than a nice sort of quiet, I would like to play that game in a night. Like, I would love to play that game in the pub with some really cool suspenseful music playing, maybe, and not, for instance, the local cover band playing 20 feet away, or the people around the table ordering nachos and tacos because, you know, it's $2 tacos on Tuesday, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that there wasn't a lot of focus on the game, it was sort of like the game was one of the things that was going on, which I love when I'm hanging out with my friends and we're playing a game, but we're mainly hanging out. And the game is sort of incidental to spending time with my friends. And that's kind of what I felt was going on around me during that game, except that I didn't know most of those guys. And Russ and I and Blake and I think Ben, we were like sort of trying to have this experience with this game, while the other three guys, I think, were having a little more of a dinner and sort of hanging out. And I feel like I don't know if it was because it missed me one direction or the other, but it just wasn't an atmosphere. If you add that to the loud bar atmosphere, you add that to the cover band that was playing. And it really just didn't show that game off to its full potential. And so I feel like I don't know that I've ever done this before, but I think I'm going to, not unlike my reaction to Batman versus Superman, I'm going to step back my reaction, or step forward, I should say, my reaction to Dark Moon. I'm going to commit to playing it again in an environment more conducive to having fun with that kind of game, like I used to do with Battlestar Galactica. We used to play it down here in the pub, or at other gaming venues where it was more focused and quieter. And I'm going to do that. And I really do think that game probably deserves just a straight up 3+ with 3+. And I don't think I gave it enough of a shot, and I felt bad about that too. So I've basically been guilt-ridden over the last few days. So anyway, that's about all I've got to say about everything. So thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACADACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Lovely.
Oh, lovely. Excellent.
You sound great. Let me get your levels there. Craig, give me some levels.
I've got no levels for you.
All right. Curt, give me some levels.
I've got a parade.
Ooh, I like that. Let me try one.
I love a parade.
I'm going to try my...
See, there we go. There's some levels.
I was teaching my kids an old school song that I had set to the new Adele Hello, which is something like this, right? Here we go. Hello from the calculator. 07734. That's my song.
I don't get it.
If you type in 07734, turn the calculator upside down, it says
hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
See, a little math humor for you there.
Oh, wow. You
humor.
wacky engineer
Very little.
types.
Very little. So I didn't even get a giggle, which is fine.
So is this how it's going to go then?